I'm going to say this once more, and I need you to tattoo it on your cerebral cortex. Abandon that man. This is session number 19. That's 1-9. 19 whole sessions, zero progress, zero evolution, zilch, nada, nothing. Please comprehend, process, internalize. What part of your brain is malfunctioning? What cosmic joke is being played on your neurons? This man treats you like expired yogurt. Expired, rancid, spoiled. He's an adulterer, a fabricator of truth, a walking contradiction, the count of human. His intelligence rivals that of decorative gravel. His facial arrangement suggests structurally unfortunate from skull to pelvis. You are single-handedly financing my automobile collection. Vehicle number 3 exists because your cognitive abilities have entered hibernation mode. You have failed to present even one, not a single solitary one, not one compelling justification for maintaining this relationship with this guy. So explain it to me. Why are you still entertaining this disaster of a guy? I am here waiting.
The laptop screen flickered in the dim light of Ngozi Okafor's Seoul apartment, casting blue shadows across her face. She sat cross-legged on her bed, wearing an oversized sweater that swallowed her curvy frame, one of Tae-Hyun's sweaters, though she'd never admit that to the woman currently glaring at her through the Zoom window. Dr. Hannah Adeyemi looked impeccable as always. Her salt and pepper hair was pulled into a sophisticated updo, her designer glasses perched on her nose, her silk blouse pressed to perfection despite it being nearly midnight in Lagos. But her face... oh, her face was a storm of barely contained fury. "I'm going to say this once more, and I need you to tattoo it on your cerebral cortex," Dr. Hannah began, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Abandon that specimen." Ngozi flinched, pulling the sleeves of the sweater down over her wrists, over the bruises. "This is session number 19. That's 1-9. 19 whole sessions." Dr. Hannah held up her fingers, counting them off dramatically for the camera. Zero progress, zero evolution, zilch, nada, nothing. Comprehend, process, internalize. What part of your brain is malfunctioning? What cosmic joke is being played on your neurons? Ngozi opened her mouth to respond, but Dr. Hannah was just getting started. She stood up from her desk, and Ngozi could see her pacing in the frame, gesticulating wildly. "This man treats you like expired yogurt. Expired, rancid, spoiled. He's an adulterer, a fabricator of truth, a walking contradiction, a counterfeit human. His intelligence rivals that of decorative gravel. His facial arrangement suggests God was distracted. Structurally unfortunate from skull to pelvis." Despite everything, Ngozi felt a flicker of defensiveness. Tae-Hyun was beautiful, devastatingly so. That sharp jawline, those calculating eyes that softened only for her, that body. "Evacuate the premises of this relationship," Dr. Hannah continued, her voice rising. "Why are you sponsoring my luxury lifestyle with your profound lack of judgment? Why am I being compensated handsomely to recite the same sermon repeatedly like a malfunctioning motivational robot?" She leaned closer to her camera, and Ngozi could see the genuine exhaustion beneath the anger. "You are single-handedly financing my automobile collection. Vehicle number 3 exists because your cognitive abilities have entered hibernation mode. Your intelligence has been dimmed like a faulty light bulb. Remove yourself from his vicinity." Ngozi felt tears pricking at her eyes. She knew how this sounded. She knew how she looked. A grown woman, a talented designer, reduced to making excuses for a man who hurt her. "You have failed to present even one, not a single solitary one, not one compelling justification for maintaining this connection?" Dr. Hannah stopped pacing, stared directly into the camera with those sharp, knowing eyes. "So, explain it to me. Why are you still entertaining this disaster?" The words came out before Ngozi could stop them, small and pathetic in the quiet of her bedroom. "Because I love him?" Silence stretched between Seoul and Lagos, traveling through fiber-optic cables and satellites, carrying the weight of Ngozi's helplessness across an ocean. "Dr. Hannah," Ngozi tried again, reaching toward the screen as if she could bridge the impossible distance. "Dr. Hannah." The screen went black. Session 19 was over. Ngozi sat in the sudden silence of her apartment, staring at her own reflection in the dark laptop screen. The woman looking back at her had Ngozi's face, same full lips, same expressive eyes that once sparkled with ambition, same dark skin that used to glow with confidence. But there was something missing now, some essential spark that had been slowly extinguished over the past 18 months. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. She didn't need to look to know who it was. Tae-Hyun. Therapy over? Come home. Home. He called his penthouse home, as if she lived there, as if she belonged to him. Which she supposed she did, in all the ways that mattered and several that didn't. Her fingers hovered over the phone. She should tell him she needed space, should tell him she was tired, that Dr. Hannah's words had cut too close to truths she'd been avoiding, should tell him anything except, okay, Ngozi, on my way. She sent the text and immediately hated herself for it, but not enough to stay away, never enough to stay away. Before she left, before she returned to him like she always did, Ngozi opened her photo album. She needed to remember, needed to trace the path that had led her here, to this moment, to this version of herself she barely recognized. She scrolled back through 18 months of photos until she found it. Seoul Fashion Week. The night everything changed, the night she met Kim Tae-Hyun and started the slow process of destroying herself. 18 months earlier. The gallery space had been transformed into something magical. Ngozi stood at the edge of the crowd, trying not to hyperventilate as models glided past wearing her designs. Vibrant Ankara prints merged seamlessly with traditional hanbok silhouettes, bold geometric patterns from West Africa flowing into the elegant lines of Korean formal wear. It was a conversation between two cultures, two aesthetics, two parts of her identity finally in dialogue. Her hands trembled as she watched Seoul's fashion elite examine her work. Buyers circled like sharks. Critics took notes. Photographers captured every angle. This was it. Everything she'd worked for since arriving in Seoul 4 years ago. Every late night at her sewing machine, every rejection, every moment of doubt had led to this. Breathtaking, a voice said behind her. Ngozi turned to offer a modest thanks, to explain her inspiration, to do what she always did when someone complimented her work, deflect and diminish. The words died in her throat. The man standing less than 3 feet away was the kind of beautiful that didn't seem quite real. Tall, easily over 6 feet, with a lean, powerful build that his perfectly tailored suit only emphasized. His face was all sharp angles, high cheekbones, a strong jaw, a mouth that looked like it rarely smiled but might be devastating when it did. His dark hair was styled back, revealing a forehead and features that could have belonged to a sculpture. But it was his eyes that made Ngozi's breath catch, dark and calculating as they swept the room, taking in everything, missing nothing. When those eyes landed on her, something in them shifted, warmed. Focused with an intensity that made her feel like the only person in the room. "You're Ngozi Okafor," he said. Not a question, a statement of fact. She managed a nod, suddenly very aware of how she looked. Her natural hair in braids, her own Ankara dress that seemed amateur compared to the haute couture surrounding them, her nervous energy that must have been radiating off her in waves. "I'm Tae-Hyun Kim." He extended his hand, and when she took it, his grip was warm and firm and somehow possessive. His hand engulfed hers, and he held on just a beat longer than necessary. "I want to buy your entire collection." Ngozi let out a nervous laugh. That's very flattering, but several pieces already have interested buyers." $200,000. The number hit her like a physical blow. She stared at him, certain she'd misheard. The gallery was loud with chatter and music. Maybe she'd gotten it wrong. "I'm sorry, what?" $200,000 for everything. He gestured at the room with his free hand. He still hadn't let go of hers, where her designs hung on mannequins and walls, where models wore them like armor. "I'll write you a check right now." Ngozi's mind struggled to process this. She'd priced the entire collection at $70,000, and that had felt ambitious. This man was offering nearly triple that amount. I don't even know you," she managed, finally extracting her hand from his grip. She could still feel the warmth of his palm, the controlled strength in his fingers. "You will." His smile was slow and dangerous and completely confident. It transformed his face from merely handsome to something that made her stomach flip. "Have dinner with me." Every instinct Ngozi possessed told her to say no. This man radiated danger. There was something predatory in the way he looked at her, something that suggested he was used to getting exactly what he wanted. The expensive watch on his wrist probably cost more than her yearly rent. The way other people in the gallery gave him a wide berth. The subtle deference in how the gallery owner had greeted him earlier. It all pointed to someone with power. The kind of power that could crush someone like her without effort. "I really should stay here," she said weakly. "Network, you know. Talk to potential buyers." "I'm your buyer." He pulled out a checkbook, an actual physical checkbook. Who carried those anymore? And wrote with swift, confident strokes. 200,000. All of it is yours. No strings attached. He tore off the check and held it out to her. "Except dinner." Ngozi stared at the check. Her hands were shaking as she took it. The zeros seemed to multiply as she looked at them. This was more money than she'd ever seen at once. This was enough to pay off her student loans, to upgrade her equipment, to finally stop working 3 jobs just to afford fabric. "Just dinner?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the pounding of her heart. "Just dinner." His eyes were dark and unreadable. "I want to know the mind that created this." He gestured at her designs. "I want to understand how you see the world." It was the perfect thing to say. Not a comment about her body, not a crude proposition, not any of the things men usually said when they wanted something from her. He was interested in her work, in her mind, in the art she'd created. "Okay," she heard herself say. "Okay, yes, dinner." His smile widened, and Ngozi felt something in her chest constrict, like a trap closing, like a door shutting, like the first step off a cliff. "Perfect. I'll pick you up at 8. Ngozi spent the 3 hours between the gallery and 8 o'clock in a state of controlled panic. She went home to her tiny apartment in Hongdae, a neighborhood that was affordable because it was far from the glittering wealth of Gangnam, and tried on everything in her closet twice. Her phone rang. It was Amara, her best friend from back home in Lagos, the one person who always answered her video calls no matter the time difference. "Girl, you look stressed," Amara said the moment her face appeared on screen. She was in her living room in Lagos, wrapped in a colorful lapa, her short, natural hair framing her round face. "What happened? Did the show go badly?" "No, it went amazing. I sold everything." "What?" Amara shrieked loud enough that Ngozi had to pull the phone away from her ear. "Ngozi, that's incredible. I'm so proud of you." "Yeah, but," Ngozi bit her lip, "one buyer bought everything, for way more than asking price." "That's good though, right?" "He wants to take me to dinner." Silence. Then Amara's eyes narrowed. "What kind of man?" "Korean. Rich, really, really rich, like wrote me a $200,000 check without blinking rich. Ngozi Chidinma Okafor." Amara used her full name, which meant she was going into protective mode. "Please tell me you know who this man is." "His name is Tae-Hyun Kim. He said he's in import-export." "Import-export." Amara's voice went flat. "Ngozi, in Seoul. Do you know what that usually means?" "Business?" "Mafia, babe. That's code for mafia." Ngozi laughed nervously. "You watch too many K-dramas. Not every rich Korean businessman is a gangster. But some of them are." Amara leaned closer to her camera. "Promise me you'll be careful. Promise me you'll meet him somewhere public, you'll keep your location shared with me, and you won't go anywhere alone with him." "I promise," Ngozi said, even though she knew she was probably lying. There was something about Tae-Hyun that made her want to be reckless, something that made her forget all her careful rules about men and money and danger. After she hung up with Amara, Ngozi finally settled on a dress, one of her own designs, naturally, a fitted Ankara print in deep blues and golds that hugged her curves and made her dark skin glow. She left her braids down, added gold hoops to her ears, and looked at herself in the mirror. She looked good. She looked like someone who belonged in expensive restaurants with powerful men. The buzzer rang at exactly 8 o'clock. Tae-Hyun's car was a black Mercedes with tinted windows and a driver who didn't speak. He held the door open for Ngozi, and she slid into the back seat to find Tae-Hyun waiting, looking somehow even more devastating than he had at the gallery. He'd changed into a different suit, still perfectly tailored but more casual. His hair was slightly less styled now, falling a bit over his forehead in a way that made him look younger, less intimidating. Almost. "You look beautiful," he said simply, and the way he looked at her made her believe he meant it. "Thank you. You look nice, too." He smiled at her awkwardness. "Just nice?" "Very nice," she amended, and he laughed, a real laugh that crinkled the corners of his eyes and made him look almost boyish. The restaurant was on a rooftop in Gangnam, the kind of place that didn't have prices on the menu because if you had to ask, you couldn't afford it. The view was spectacular. Seoul spread out below them like a constellation of stars, the Han River a dark ribbon cutting through the lights. They had a private table, separated from other diners by elegant screens. Soft music played in the background. A waiter appeared immediately with champagne. "I didn't know what you liked," Tae-Hyun said as the waiter poured. "So I ordered a tasting menu. If there's anything you don't eat—" "I eat everything," Ngozi assured him. "I'm Nigerian. We don't waste food." He smiled at that. "Tell me about growing up in Lagos." So she did. She told him about her childhood in a middle-class neighborhood, about her mother who taught English at a secondary school, and her father who worked in banking. About her grandmother who had taught her to sew, who had shown her how fabric could tell stories. About the markets in Lagos where you could find any textile in the world if you knew where to look. "Why fashion?" he asked, genuinely curious. "Because clothes are how we communicate who we are before we even speak," Ngozi said, warming to her subject. "In Nigeria, you can tell someone's tribe, their social status, what occasion they're attending, all from what they're wearing." And I love that, the idea that we wear our identities, our stories, our cultures on our bodies. And why blend it with Korean aesthetics? Because I wanted to create something new, something that honored both parts of my identity, my Nigerian heritage and my life here in Seoul. Korean and Nigerian textiles have similar philosophies, actually. Both cultures use vibrant colors, both have deep symbolism in their patterns, both use clothing to mark important life events. I thought, what if I could make them talk to each other? What if I could show that different cultures aren't in competition, they're in conversation? Tae-Hyun was quiet for a moment, his dark eyes fixed on her face with an intensity that made her skin warm. "You see connections others miss," he said finally. "That's rare. That's valuable." Ngozi felt herself blushing. Unused to this kind of attention from someone who looked like he could have anyone he wanted. "What about you?" she asked, trying to deflect. "Tell me about your work." "It's boring," he said dismissively. "Import-export, moving goods from one place to another, making sure everything flows smoothly." "Your father's business?" Something flickered across his face, something dark and bitter. "Yes. He built it from nothing. Now I'm expected to maintain it, expand it, prove I'm worthy of the Kim name." "That sounds like a lot of pressure." "It is." He took a sip of his champagne. "My father believes in strength above all else. Weakness is unacceptable. Sentiment is unacceptable. Love is—" He trailed off, then shook his head. "Sorry, I don't usually talk about this." But Ngozi wanted him to talk about it. Wanted to understand what put that darkness in his eyes, what made a man this powerful look suddenly vulnerable. "What do you fear most?" she asked softly. The question seemed to surprise him. He set down his glass and looked at her for a long moment. "Becoming like my father," he said finally. "Cold, cruel, incapable of connection, and weakness. I fear showing weakness to people who would use it against me." It should have been a warning. Looking back later, Ngozi would recognize it as a red flag waving frantically in her face. But in that moment, all she heard was a man who'd been hurt, who'd been raised without softness, who needed someone to show him that vulnerability wasn't weakness. She reached across the table and took his hand. "What do you fear?" he asked, turning the question back on her. "Being invisible," she admitted. "Being ordinary. Working this hard and this long and realizing that I don't matter, that I won't leave a mark." His hand tightened around hers. "You could never be invisible, Ngozi Okafor. You're the kind of woman who changes the temperature of a room just by walking into it." Her breath caught. No one had ever said anything like that to her before. The food came, course after course of beautifully plated dishes that Ngozi barely tasted because she was too caught up in the conversation, in the way Tae-Hyun listened to her like every word mattered, in the feeling of his thumb tracing small circles on her palm. They talked for hours. About art and ambition, about Seoul and Lagos, about the pressure of expectations and the terror of freedom. He asked her about every piece in her collection, what inspired it, what it meant, where she saw her work going. He was genuinely interested, genuinely engaged, and Ngozi found herself opening up in ways she rarely did with anyone. "I should get you home," he said finally, reluctantly, when the restaurant was starting to close around them. "It's late." But neither of them moved. "Or," he said slowly, his eyes locked on hers, "you could come see my place, just for a drink. I have an incredible view of the city." Every promise Ngozi had made to Amara, every rule she'd set for herself about not going home with men on first dates, every instinct that told her to go slow, all of it evaporated under the heat of his gaze. "Okay," she whispered. His penthouse was in Gangnam, on the top floor of a building that probably had more security than most banks. The elevator required a keycard to access his floor. Everything about it screamed money and power and danger. The doors opened directly into his apartment, no hallway, just straight into a massive open-plan space with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a 360-degree view of Seoul. The city glittered below them like a scattered treasure, and Ngozi walked to the windows in a daze. "It's beautiful," she breathed. "Yes," Tae-Hyun said from directly behind her, close enough that she could feel the heat of his body. "It is." But when she turned, he wasn't looking at the view. He was looking at her. The air between them felt charged, electric. Ngozi's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. "Ngozi," he said softly, and just the way he said her name, with that slight Korean accent, with that low, rough edge to his voice, made her knees weak. "Tell me to stop and I will. Tell me you want to leave and I'll have my driver take you home right now. But if you stay—" "If I stay," she whispered. "If you stay, I'm going to kiss you, and I'm not going to want to stop at kissing." She should leave, should thank him for dinner and get in that car and go home to her safe, small apartment and her safe, small life. Should listen to Amara's warnings and Dr. Hannah's future lectures and every rational thought in her head. Instead, she closed the distance between them and kissed him first. The kiss started soft, tentative, testing, but it didn't stay that way. Tae-Hyun's hand came up to cup the back of Ngozi's head, his fingers threading through her braids, and he deepened the kiss with a hunger that made her gasp against his mouth. She felt his other hand slide to her waist, pulling her flush against him, and suddenly there was no space between them at all. She'd been kissed before. She'd had boyfriends, relationships, even a semi-serious thing with a fellow design student back in Lagos. But none of it had felt like this, like drowning and flying simultaneously, like every nerve ending in her body had suddenly woken up and was screaming for more. Tae-Hyun walked her backward until she hit the window, the cold glass against her back a stark contrast to the heat of his body pressed against her front. His mouth moved from her lips to her jaw, down the column of her throat, and Ngozi heard herself make a sound she'd never made before. Desperate and needy and completely beyond her control. "Bedroom," she managed to gasp out. "Too far," he growled against her neck, and then his hands were sliding up her thighs, bunching the fabric of her dress, lifting her. She wrapped her legs around his waist instinctively, and he carried her to the massive white couch that faced the windows. They fell onto it in a tangle of limbs and desire. Ngozi's dress came off. Or maybe she took it off, she couldn't remember later. His suit followed, and then it was just skin against skin, his mouth everywhere, his hands learning the geography of her body like he was memorizing a map. "You're so beautiful," he murmured against her breast, and the reverence in his voice made something in her chest crack open. So perfect. When he finally entered her, Ngozi cried out. Not from pain, but from the overwhelming sensation of being filled, being claimed, being utterly consumed. He moved with a controlled intensity that suggested he was holding himself back, being careful with her. And she both appreciated it and resented it. "Don't," she panted, her nails digging into his shoulders. "Don't hold back." Something dark and hungry flashed in his eyes. "You don't know what you're asking for." "Yes, I do." He kissed her hard, possessive. And then his control shattered. What followed was raw and primal, and so intense that Ngozi lost track of where she ended and he began. She came apart beneath him, crying out in a mixture of Igbo and English, her body arching off the couch as pleasure crashed through her in waves. "Again," he commanded, his voice rough. "I want to hear it again." And God help her, she did. Multiple times, until she was boneless and shaking and couldn't remember her own name. Afterward, they lay tangled together on the couch, Seoul glittering beyond the windows, their breathing slowly returning to normal. Tae-Hyun's hand traced lazy patterns on her hip, and Ngozi felt simultaneously sated and unsettled, like she'd just done something she couldn't take back. "I'm Mara Emma," he whispered into her hair. Ngozi went rigid. That was Igbo. "You're beautiful." She pulled back to look at him. "How do you know that?" A small smile played at his lips. "After I saw your name on the exhibition program, I looked up basic Igbo phrases. I wanted to be able to speak to you in your language." Something in Ngozi's chest cracked wider. This beautiful, powerful, dangerous man had taken the time to learn words in her language just for her, just to make her feel seen, special, chosen. "Say something else," she whispered. "Ahuru mgi nanya," he said softly, his dark eyes locked on hers. "I love you." It was too soon for those words, way too soon. They'd known each other for less than 12 hours, but lying there in his arms, in his penthouse that touched the sky, Ngozi felt herself falling anyway, felt herself believing in the impossible fantasy that this could be real, that she could be the woman who tamed the wolf, who saw beneath the danger to the wounded man underneath. "This is just the beginning," Tae-Hyun murmured, pulling her closer. "You're mine now, Ngozi. Say it. Say you're mine." She should have been alarmed by the possessiveness in his voice, should have recognized the warning signs, the intensity, the speed, the way he talked about her like she was an object to be owned. Instead, she heard herself whisper, "I'm yours." It was the first of many times she would surrender pieces of herself to him. The first of many times she would ignore her instincts in favor of the intoxicating feeling of being wanted by someone like him. They eventually made it to his bedroom, a space of crisp, white sheets and more floor-to-ceiling windows, and that same breathtaking view. He made love to her again there, slower this time, almost tender, and Ngozi felt herself sinking deeper into the fantasy, into the lie she was already starting to tell herself about who he was and who they could be together. When she finally fell asleep in his arms, she dreamed of wedding hanboks made from Ankara print, of a future where two worlds merged seamlessly, of a love that could survive anything. She didn't know yet that she was already drowning. The next few weeks passed in a blur of euphoria and excess that Ngozi would later barely remember as real. It felt like living in a K-drama or a fever dream, too perfect, too intense, too much to be sustainable. Tae-Hyun was everywhere, all the time. He texted her constantly. Good morning messages with sunrise photos taken from his penthouse, lunch invitations to restaurants where she couldn't pronounce anything on the menu, evening requests that always ended with her in his bed. He sent flowers to her apartment, Not a bouquet, but an entire garden's worth, until her tiny studio looked like a botanical wonderland. He sent his driver to pick her up from her part-time job at the textile shop, and she'd emerge from the cramped back room to find a black Mercedes waiting like something from another universe. "This is too much," she told him one evening as they sat in yet another expensive restaurant. This one featuring a Michelin-starred chef and a wine list that read like a novel. "Nothing is too much for you," he replied simply, reaching across the table to take her hand. "I want to give you everything you've never had, everything you deserve." And he did. Private helicopter rides over Seoul, shopping trips to Gangnam where he bought her entire racks of designer clothes despite her protests, a weekend trip to Jeju Island where they stayed in a resort so exclusive it didn't even have a website. You had to know someone to book it. And Tae-Hyun apparently knew everyone. He introduced her to his world gradually, carefully, like he was acclimating her to high altitude. Business dinners where she met men in expensive suits who spoke in careful euphemisms and whose eyes were too sharp, too knowing. Clubs he owned clubs, plural, where the music was deafening and the VIP sections were roped off and the staff treated him like royalty. Meetings that he brought her to sometimes, where she sat quietly in the corner and tried not to notice the guns tucked into shoulder holsters or the way conversation stopped when she entered the room. "What exactly do you import and export?" she asked him once, curled up in his bed after sex, her head on his tattooed chest. She'd discovered the tattoos that first night, intricate designs that covered his torso and back, tigers and dragons and Korean characters that spelled out things she couldn't read. "Various goods," he said vaguely, his hand stroking her back. "Electronics, textiles, whatever there's a market for." "Tae-Hyun," he sighed, "the less you know, the safer you are, Ngozi. My world, it's not always legal. It's not always clean, but it's the world I was born into, and it's the world I have to navigate. I keep you separate from it because I want you to stay pure, untouched by all the ugliness." She should have pressed, should have demanded details, should have run screaming in the other direction. But he was holding her so gently, and his heartbeat was steady under her ear, and she was already so deep in whatever this was that turning back felt impossible. "I trust you," she whispered instead. She felt him tense slightly, then relax. "You shouldn't," he said quietly. "But I'm glad you do." 3 weeks after they met, Tae-Hyun asked her to meet some of her friends. She'd been putting it off, knowing what Amara would say, knowing how it would look. Her wealthy, mysterious boyfriend with his vague job description and his excessive gifts and his eyes that sometimes went cold and empty when he thought she wasn't looking. But she couldn't hide him forever. She arranged to meet Amara and Kioma at a cafe in Hongdae, neutral territory that felt safer than either inviting them to Tae-Hyun's penthouse or meeting in Gangnam where his world was. Kioma was Nigerian Korean, a petite woman with mixed features and long black hair who'd become Ngozi's friend and guide when she first arrived in Seoul. She understood both worlds, spoke both languages, and had a talent for reading people that bordered on supernatural. Ngozi arrived first, nervous energy making her leg bounce under the table. When her friends walked in together, Amara must have flown in without telling her, she stood so fast she almost knocked over her coffee. "Surprise!" Amara said, pulling her into a fierce hug. "You didn't think I'd miss meeting this man after everything you've told me, did you?" "Or not told us," Kioma added pointedly, hugging Ngozi next. "You've been very mysterious about him." They ordered coffee and caught up on the surface-level things first. Amara's job at a tech company in Lagos, Kioma's recent promotion at the marketing firm where she worked, Ngozi's collection selling out, and the sudden influx of cash that had allowed her to quit 2 of her 3 jobs. "Speaking of which," Chioma said, stirring her latte, "when do we meet this mysterious benefactor who bought everything?" As if summoned, Tae-Hyun appeared in the doorway of the cafe. He'd insisted on joining them, despite Ngozi's protests that she wanted to ease her friends into the idea of him. But he'd been adamant, and she'd learned quickly that when Tae-Hyun wanted something, he made it happen. Every head in the cafe turned as he entered. He had that effect, the kind of presence that demanded attention even when he wasn't trying. He wore casual clothes today, jeans and a simple black sweater, but he still looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine. Dangerous and beautiful and completely out of place in this student cafe with its mismatched furniture and indie music. His eyes found Ngozi immediately, and his face softened into something almost gentle. He crossed to their table, and Ngozi stood to greet him. "Everyone, this is Tae-Hyun Kim," she said, hearing the nervousness in her own voice. "Tae-Hyun, this is my best friend Amara from Lagos, and this is Kioma." "It's a pleasure," Tae-Hyun said, bowing slightly, a gesture of respect that seemed at odds with everything else about him. He shook hands with both women, and Ngozi watched her friend's reactions carefully. Amara's eyes were wide, taking in his appearance, his expensive watch, the way he moved with absolute confidence. Kioma's eyes were narrowed, assessing, and Ngozi could practically see her running calculations. They all sat. Tae-Hyun's hand immediately found Ngozi's thigh under the table, possessive and warm. "So," Amara said after an awkward beat of silence, "you're the man who bought Ngozi's entire collection. That's very generous." "It's not generosity when the work is worth it," Tae-Hyun replied smoothly. "Ngozi is extraordinarily talented. I'm just fortunate to have recognized it early." "And what do you do?" Kioma asked, her Korean accent more pronounced than usual. She was using her polite, formal voice, the one that meant she was being careful. "Import-export. International trade. Nothing as interesting as Ngozi's work." "Import-export," Kioma repeated, and something flickered in her eyes. Recognition. Or maybe warning. The conversation continued, polite and surface level, but Ngozi could feel the tension underneath. Could see the way Amara kept glancing between her and Tae-Hyun, like she was trying to solve an equation that didn't make sense. Could see the way Kioma's smile never quite reached her eyes. When Tae-Hyun excused himself to take a phone call stepping outside, Amara immediately leaned forward. "Ngozi," she whispered urgently, "do you know who he is?" "Yes." "Tae-Hyun Kim. He's Mafia, babe," Kioma cut in, her voice low. "Everyone in Seoul knows Kim Tae-Hyun. His family controls half of Gangnam's underground. Clubs, gambling, protection rackets. His father is one of the most powerful crime bosses in Korea." Ngozi's stomach dropped. No. He said he's an import-export. That's what they all say," Kioma insisted. "Ngozi, I'm serious. This man is dangerous. Whatever you think this is, it's not some fairy tale romance. Men like him don't date women like us. They own them." "You don't know him," Ngozi said defensively, even as doubt crept in. "He's been nothing but good to me. He's kind. He's generous." "He bought you," Amara said bluntly. $200,000. That's not a purchase, babe. That's an investment. And men like him always collect on their investments." "That's not fair. You've known him for 10 minutes. And in those 10 minutes, I've seen how he looks at you," Amara continued. "Like you're his possession. Like you're something he owns. And the way you are with him, Ngozi, you're different, smaller, like you're already trying to make yourself fit into whatever box he wants to put you in." "I love him," Ngozi said, the words coming out more defensive than she'd intended. "I know it's fast, but I do. And he loves me." "Oh, sweetie," Kioma said softly, reaching for her hand. "Please be careful, please. Men like him, they don't love. They consume." Tae-Hyun returned then, sliding back into his seat, his hand immediately returning to Ngozi's thigh. She could feel the tension radiating off her friends, could see the concern in their eyes, but she could also feel Tae-Hyun's solid presence beside her, could remember the way he held her at night, the way he whispered Igbo phrases into her hair, the way he made her feel seen and special and chosen. "Is everything okay?" he asked, his dark eyes scanning the table. "Everything's fine," Ngozi said quickly. Too quickly. His hand tightened on her thigh just slightly. A warning or a reassurance. She wasn't sure. The rest of the meeting was strained. Amara and Kioma made polite conversation, but the ease was gone. When they finally said goodbye outside the cafe, Amara pulled Ngozi aside while Tae-Hyun waited by his car. "I'm flying back to Lagos tomorrow," Amara said, holding both of Ngozi's hands. "But I need you to promise me something. Promise me you'll be careful. Promise me you'll listen to your gut. And promise me that if things get bad, when they get bad, you'll call me. Day or night, I don't care. You call me. Amara, you're being dramatic. Promise me, Ngozi." "Okay," Ngozi said, just to make her friend feel better. "I promise." It was a promise she would break. Multiple times. That night, in Tae-Hyun's penthouse, they fought for the first time. "Your friends don't like me," he said flatly, pouring himself a whiskey at his bar. "They're just protective," Ngozi replied, curling up on his couch. "They don't know you yet. They think I'm mafia." Silence. Ngozi didn't know what to say to that. "Are you?" she finally asked, her voice small. Tae-Hyun turned to look at her, his expression unreadable. "Would it matter if I was?" I don't know." He crossed to her, sat down, pulled her into his lap despite her resistance. "My family's business is complicated," he said carefully. "We operate in gray areas, sometimes black areas. But I've never lied to you about what I am, Ngozi. I told you my world isn't always legal or clean." "There's a difference between not always legal and organized crime, Tae-Hyun." "Is there?" He tipped her chin up, forced her to meet his eyes. "The fashion industry you love so much. Do you think all those textiles you import are acquired through purely legal means? Do you think every business in Seoul operates by the book? The world is gray, Ngozi. No one is entirely clean." It was a false equivalency, and she knew it. But his hand was on her face. His eyes were searching hers, and she wanted so badly to believe him. "I would never let anything touch you," he continued. "My world, my work, I keep it separate. You're sacred to me. You're the one pure thing in my life. Don't let your friends poison that. They're not trying to poison anything. They're worried about me. Because they're jealous." His voice took on an edge. "They see you happy, see you succeeding, see you with someone who can give you everything you've ever wanted, and they can't stand it. That's what this is really about." "That's not true." "Isn't it?" He stood, depositing her back on the couch, beginning to pace. "Amara's single, isn't she? Has been for years. And Kioma, when's the last time she was in a serious relationship? They're projecting their fears onto you because they can't stand to see you have what they don't." Ngozi wanted to argue, wanted to defend her friends, but doubt was creeping in. Was he right? Were they jealous? They had seemed very quick to judge him, very ready to believe the worst. "I don't want to fight," she said quietly. I need you to understand that they're important to me, and I need them to see that you're good for me." "Then show them," Tae-Hyun said, coming back to sit beside her. "Show them how happy we are. Show them that what we have is real and strong, and nothing they say can touch it." He kissed her then, possessive and demanding, and Ngozi kissed him back. Let him undo the buttons of her shirt. Let him lay her back on the couch. Let him make her forget everything but the feeling of his hands on her skin and his mouth on hers. Later, as she lay in his bed listening to him sleep, she thought about calling Amara, thought about admitting that maybe her friends were right to worry. But Tae-Hyun's arm was heavy across her waist, and his breathing was steady and peaceful, and she didn't want to ruin this perfect thing they'd built by introducing more doubt. So she closed her eyes and went to sleep and told herself everything would be fine. It was the second of many lies she would tell herself about Tae-Hyun and what they were building together. Over the next month, Tae-Hyun launched a campaign to prove Ngozi's friends wrong. It was calculated and deliberate and completely effective. He invited Kioma to lunch, just the two of them, and returned with her number saved in his phone and a tentative truce. He sent Amara a gift in Lagos, a first-class plane ticket to Seoul anytime she wanted to visit, along with a handwritten note apologizing for any tension and thanking her for being such a good friend to Ngozi. He was charming and deferential and careful to show only the best version of himself whenever Ngozi's friends were around. And with Ngozi, he was perfect. He learned her schedule and showed up with coffee during her breaks at the textile shop. He commissioned 3 more pieces from her, personal pieces, he said, for his private collection, and paid her double what she asked. He took her to gallery openings and fashion shows, introducing her to designers and buyers and people who could help her career. He was investing in her future, he said, in their future together. "I want you to succeed," he told her one evening as they walked along the Han River, Seoul's lights reflected in the water like liquid gold. "I want the whole world to know your name. I want you to have everything you've ever dreamed of." "I just want to create beautiful things," Ngozi said, leaning into his side. The early spring air was cool, and she wore one of the jackets he'd bought her, soft leather that probably cost more than her first car. "Then you'll create them, and I'll make sure you have everything you need to do it." He stopped walking, turned to face her, his hands framing her face. "I'm going to take care of you, Ngozi, always. You'll never have to worry about money or stability or whether you can afford the fabric you want or the equipment you need. That's my job now. Your job is just to be brilliant." It should have set off alarm bells, the implication that she needed taking care of, that her job was just to be pretty and talented while he handled the real responsibilities. But Ngozi had spent 4 years in Seoul struggling, working multiple jobs, choosing between eating well and buying fabric, watching her dreams move at a glacial pace because she could never quite afford to move faster. The idea of someone shouldering that burden, of being able to focus entirely on her art without the constant anxiety of money, it was intoxicating. "You're too good to me," she whispered. "No." His eyes were intense in the dim light. "I'm exactly as good to you as you deserve. The world has made you think you should be grateful for scraps. I'm teaching you to expect banquets." He kissed her there on the riverside path, and Ngozi felt herself falling deeper into whatever this was, felt the last of her reservations melting away like snow in spring. The night everything shifted started innocently enough. Tae-Hyun wanted to take her to one of his clubs, Club Azure, a massive space in Gangnam that was apparently the place to be seen on Friday nights. Ngozi had been reluctant. Clubs weren't really her scene, and something about entering Tae-Hyun's professional space made her nervous. But he'd been insistent, and she'd learned that disappointing him created a tension between them that felt worse than just going along with what he wanted. She wore a dress he'd bought her, black and sleek and far more revealing than what she usually wore. It hugged every curve, ended mid-thigh, and made her feel simultaneously powerful and exposed. "You look incredible," Tae-Hyun said when his driver picked her up. His eyes roamed over her body with undisguised hunger. "Everyone's going to want you. But you're mine." The possessiveness in his voice made her skin prickle, not entirely in a bad way. Club Azure was impressive. Multiple levels, state-of-the-art sound system, lighting that turned the whole space into a living art installation, beautiful people everywhere, dancing and drinking and trying to look like they weren't trying. Tae-Hyun moved through it like a king through his kingdom, staff scurrying to accommodate him, patrons stepping aside to let him pass. The VIP section was roped off and elevated, giving them a view of the entire club. Tae-Hyun's hand never left Ngozi's waist as they walked, marking her as his in front of everyone who mattered. "Kim Sajongnim," the hostess said, bowing deeply. "Your usual table is ready." They settled into a curved booth with a perfect view of everything. Champagne appeared without being ordered. Tae-Hyun's associates began arriving, men in expensive suits with hard eyes and easy smiles, women who looked like they'd stepped out of fashion magazines. Ngozi sat close to Tae-Hyun, trying to look comfortable, trying to belong. Conversations happened around her in rapid Korean, too fast for her to follow, punctuated by laughter and the occasional glance in her direction. She felt like a trophy on display, decorative but ultimately irrelevant to the real business being conducted. "Are you okay?" Tae-Hyun murmured in her ear during a lull in conversation. "Fine," she lied, just taking it all in. His hand squeezed her thigh under the table, and she wasn't sure if it was reassurance or warning. An hour passed. Then another. Ngozi nursed her champagne and watched the club pulse below them. Tae-Hyun was in his element here, commanding and confident, every inch the powerful man his reputation suggested. She could see people pointing at their section, whispering, trying to catch glimpses of the notorious Kim Tae-Hyun and his new foreign girlfriend. Then a woman approached their table. She was stunning, tall and willowy with the kind of bone structure that belonged on runways. Her dress was designer, her hair was perfect, and the way she moved suggested she knew exactly how beautiful she was. She walked right past the security guard who tried to stop her, past the ropes that marked the VIP section as off-limits, and stopped directly in front of their table, in front of Tae-Hyun. "Oppa," she said, her voice lilting and familiar. "It's been too long." Ngozi felt Tae-Hyun tense beside her. The entire table went quiet. The woman seemed oblivious to, or unconcerned by, the sudden shift in atmosphere. She reached out and placed her hand on Tae-Hyun's chest, right over his heart. Possessive, familiar, like she had every right to touch him. "I've missed you," the woman continued in Korean, and Ngozi understood enough to feel her stomach drop. "Why don't you call any more?" Tae-Hyun's face had gone cold, not angry, cold, empty. Like a switch had been flipped, and the man sitting beside Ngozi had been replaced by something else entirely. "Minji," he said quietly, "you need to leave." "But I just got here." The woman, Minji, pouted prettily. "And we have so much to catch up on. Remember that night in Busan, when you said—" She didn't get to finish. Tae-Hyun moved faster than Ngozi would have thought possible. His hand shot out and grabbed Minji's wrist, yanking her hand off his chest. Then, with casual brutality, he backhanded her across the face. The sound of the impact cut through the music. Minji stumbled, would have fallen if one of Tae-Hyun's security guards hadn't caught her. Her perfect face was suddenly marked with red, her expression shocked and hurt. "Get her out," Tae-Hyun said, his voice flat. "And make sure she understands she's not welcome in any of my establishments again." The security guard dragged Minji away. She was crying now, mascara running down her face, but no one at the table seemed to care. Conversations resumed as if nothing had happened, as if a woman hadn't just been assaulted in front of everyone. Ngozi sat frozen, her heart pounding, her mind struggling to process what she'd just witnessed. Tae-Hyun had hit that woman. Had hit her hard enough to leave a mark, hard enough to make her cry, and he'd done it as casually as swatting a fly. "Are you okay?" Tae-Hyun asked, turning to her. His voice was gentle again, his hand back on her thigh, his eyes searching her face with concern. "Did you just—" Ngozi started, her voice shaking. "You hit her." "She was disrespecting you," he said simply. "She touched me in front of you. That's unacceptable." "But violence isn't—" "Ngozi." He cupped her face, forced her to look at him. "No one disrespects what's mine. Not in my club, not in front of me. She needed to learn that lesson." "You hurt her? She'll be fine. A bruise, maybe. Some hurt pride. But she'll never disrespect me or my woman again." His thumb stroked her cheek, gentle despite what his hands had just done. "I told you I protect what's mine. This is what that looks like." Ngozi's mind was reeling. Every instinct she had was screaming at her to leave, to run, to recognize this for the massive red flag it was. This was violence. Casual, brutal violence against a woman who'd done nothing worse than touch him and flirt. But Tae-Hyun was looking at her with such intensity, such focus, like she was the only person in the world who mattered. And he'd done it for her, hadn't he? To defend her, to show everyone that she was special, that she was protected. "I've never had someone defend me like that," she heard herself say. Tae-Hyun's smile was slow and satisfied. "Get used to it." He kissed her then, in front of everyone, claiming her mouth with the same possessiveness he'd shown in hitting Minji. And God help her, Ngozi kissed him back. Felt a dark thrill run through her at the display of violence on her behalf. Felt chosen and special and protected. She would remember this moment later, this exact moment when she could have left, should have left when the truth of what Tae-Hyun was capable of was displayed in technicolor in front of her, and she would remember how instead of running, she'd leaned into it, how she'd mistaken violence for devotion, how she'd let him convince her that hurting others was the same as loving her. That night, the sex was different, harder, more intense. Like Tae-Hyun was proving something, claiming something, marking her as his in ways that went beyond the physical. Ngozi responded with equal intensity, caught up in the dark energy of the evening, in the twisted logic that said violence for her meant love of her. Afterward, lying in his bed with Seoul stretched out below them, Tae-Hyun traced the curve of her hip and said, "I want to talk to you about something." "Okay," Ngozi murmured, still floating in post-orgasmic haze. "I want to fund your boutique." That got her attention. She propped herself up on one elbow to look at him. "What?" "A boutique. Your own space. Aso Seoul. That's what you'd call it, right? African and Korean fusion. Your designs front and center. A physical location where people can come and see your vision fully realized." Ngozi's heart started racing. A boutique. Her own boutique. It was everything she'd ever dreamed of but had always seemed impossibly far away. The startup costs alone would be hundreds of thousands of dollars. Space in Seoul wasn't cheap, especially in the neighborhoods where a fashion boutique could succeed. "I can't afford that," she said. "I'd need investors, a business plan, years of saving." "You have an investor," Tae-Hyun interrupted. "Me. I'll fund the entire thing. You'll have full creative control. Pick the location, design the space, stock it with your pieces, all of it. Your dream, my investment." Ngozi stared at him, torn between elation and suspicion. That's too much. Tae-Hyun, that would be hundreds of thousands of dollars." "I know what it costs. I can afford it." "But why would you?" "Because you're my woman." He said it like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "Your dreams are my responsibility now. Your success is my success. I want to see you build something extraordinary, and I want to be part of making that happen." Tears pricked at Ngozi's eyes. No one had ever believed in her like this. No one had ever offered to make her wildest dreams reality just because they loved her. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes." He pulled her closer, kissed her forehead. "Let me do this for you. For us. This is our future I'm investing in. I'd want to pay you back, eventually. When the boutique is profitable, this isn't a loan, Ngozi. It's a gift. Though." He paused, and something shifted in his expression. "I would want to handle the business side. The finances, the legal structure, the contracts with suppliers. You'd focus on the creative, the designs, the aesthetic, the vision. I'd handle the boring administrative work. Partnership. What do you think?" She should have asked more questions. Should have wondered why he wanted control of the business side. Should have recognized that partnership, where one person controlled all the money and decisions, wasn't really partnership at all. But she was already imagining it, her designs hanging in her own space, customers coming in to buy pieces she'd created, her name on the door, independence, success, everything she'd come to Seoul hoping to find. "Okay," she whispered. "Yes, let's do it." Tae-Hyun's smile was triumphant. "You won't regret this, I promise." It was a promise he would break in every possible way. The next morning, Ngozi woke up alone in Tae-Hyun's bed. She could hear him in his office down the hall, speaking rapidly in Korean on the phone. The tone sounded intense, almost angry, but when she patted down the hall in one of his shirts, he immediately softened. "I'll call you back," he said into the phone, then hung up without waiting for a response. "Good morning, beautiful. Did I wake you?" "No. What time is it?" "Early. I had some business to handle." He pulled her into his lap at his desk, and Ngozi tried not to look at his computer screen where she could see spreadsheets and documents in Korean that meant nothing to her. "Are you excited about the boutique?" "Excited and terrified," she admitted. "This is happening so fast." "Good things should happen fast. Why wait when we know what we want?" His hand slid up her thigh under the hem of the shirt. "I've already contacted a real estate agent. We're looking at spaces in Gangnam this afternoon." "This afternoon?" "Tae-Hyun, I have work." "Call in sick." This is more important. I can't just… Ngozi. His hand tightened on her thigh, just slightly. Not painful, but firm. This is your dream, your boutique. It should be your priority. Those other jobs, you don't need them anymore. You have me. There it was again, that subtle pressure to let go of the pieces of her life that existed outside of him. But he wasn't wrong. The textile shop job paid barely enough to cover her rent, and it was boring work that took time away from designing. If she had the boutique, if she had Tae-Hyun's support, she really didn't need it anymore. I'll call them, she said. Good girl. He kissed her, reward for compliance. Now go get dressed. We have a big day ahead of us. They looked at 7 different spaces that afternoon. Each one was more impressive than the last. High ceilings, perfect lighting, locations in the heart of Gangnam where foot traffic was constant and wealthy, but they were also expensive, astronomically so. And Ngozi felt increasingly uncomfortable as the real estate agent quoted monthly rents that exceeded what she made in a year. This is too much, she whispered to Tae-Hyun as they toured the 5th location. These prices are not your concern, he replied calmly. That's my department, remember? You just need to pick the space that speaks to you. Where can you see your vision coming to life? The 7th location was perfect. Corner unit with massive windows, exposed brick on one wall, polished concrete floors that could showcase her designs beautifully. It was in the heart of Garosu-gil, surrounded by high-end boutiques and cafes, the kind of neighborhood where her fusion aesthetic would fit right in. This one, she said, barely able to contain her excitement. This is it. This is also Seoul. Tae-Hyun smiled, satisfied. Then this is the one we'll take. He shook hands with the real estate agent, exchanged business cards, and by the time they left, the deal was essentially done. Ngozi floated through the rest of the day in a daze. This was really happening. Her boutique, her dream, everything she'd worked for. That evening, Tae-Hyun took her to dinner at another ridiculously expensive restaurant, and afterward, back at his penthouse, he presented her with architectural renderings. Somehow, in the span of a few hours, he'd had a designer create mock-ups of what the space could look like, display areas for her designs, a small workshop in back where she could create, a sitting area where clients could be styled and fitted. When did you… Ngozi stammered, overwhelmed. I made some calls, pulled some strings. This is what I do, Ngozi. I make things happen. He spread the renderings across his dining table. What do you think? Does it match your vision? It did. It matched it perfectly. Almost too perfectly, like he'd been inside her head and pulled out her exact dreams and made them tangible. It's incredible, she breathed. Then we'll make it reality. He pulled her close, his arms around her waist, his chin on her shoulder as they looked at the renderings together. Aso Seoul. Your legacy. Our future. She should have noticed that he said our, not your. Should have noticed how quickly everything was moving, how much control he was taking, how little actual say she had in any of the business decisions. Should have recognized that he was building her a beautiful cage and calling it freedom, but she was caught up in the fantasy. In the impossible dream becoming possible. In the feeling of being taken care of by someone powerful enough to move mountains for her. So she ignored the warning signs and told herself this was what love looked like. Grand gestures and expensive gifts, and someone who believed in her enough to invest in her future. She didn't understand yet that investments always expected returns, and that Tae-Hyun's returns would be paid in pieces of herself she couldn't afford to lose. Over the next 2 weeks, the boutique took shape with terrifying speed. Contractors were hired, renovations began, equipment was ordered. Tae-Hyun handled all of it with ruthless efficiency, presenting Ngozi with decisions that needed making, but always with options already narrowed down, paths already chosen. The contractor can start next week or the week after, he'd say, and she'd pick one, not realizing that the decision of who the contractor was had already been made without her input. These are the 3 suppliers I've vetted for fabric, he'd say, and she'd review them, not realizing he'd eliminated dozens of others based on his own criteria. She was given the illusion of control while having none of the actual power, and because the decisions she was making felt important, which fabrics to order, which colors for the walls, how to arrange the display areas, she didn't notice how many decisions she wasn't making. Her friends noticed, though. "Ngozi, have you actually seen any of the paperwork for this boutique?" Chioma asked during one of their coffee meetups. "The business registration, the lease agreement. Any of it?" "Tae-Hyun is handling all that," Ngozi replied, stirring her latte. "He's better at that stuff than I am. I'm focused on the creative side. But it's your business, your name on the door. Shouldn't you at least know what you're signing?" "I trust him." Chioma was quiet for a moment. Then, "Ngozi, I love you. You're my friend. So I'm going to say this as gently as I can. You need to protect yourself. Get a lawyer, review the documents, make sure your name is on everything, make sure you actually own this thing you're building." "Are you saying Tae-Hyun would steal from me?" "I'm saying men like him don't give gifts without strings, and you need to know what those strings are before you get too tangled up to break free." But Ngozi didn't get a lawyer, didn't review the documents, didn't ask the hard questions that might have saved her later, because asking those questions would mean not trusting Tae-Hyun, and not trusting Tae-Hyun would mean admitting that maybe her friends had been right about him from the start, and she wasn't ready to admit that. Not yet. The boutique opened exactly 4 months after Ngozi first met Tae-Hyun. 4 months from that night at the gallery to the moment she stood in front of Seoul's glass doors, her name in elegant script above the entrance, her designs visible through the windows, her dream made manifest. "Ready?" Tae-Hyun asked, his hand on the small of her back. "Ready," Ngozi breathed. He unlocked the door and they stepped inside together. The space was perfect, even better than the renderings had suggested. Her designs hung on custom-made displays, spotlit and beautiful. The Ankara prints blazed with color against the minimalist space. The hanbok-inspired silhouettes hung with elegant grace, African and Korean in conversation, just as she'd always envisioned. "It's perfect," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Tae-Hyun, it's absolutely perfect." "You're perfect," he replied, pulling her into his arms. "And this is just the beginning. This boutique is going to make you famous. Everyone in Seoul will know your name. Everyone will want a piece of Ngozi Okafor's vision." He kissed her there in the middle of her dream made real, and Ngozi kissed him back with gratitude and love and a desperate need to believe that this, all of this, was exactly what it appeared to be. That night, they made love in the boutique, right there on the floor, surrounded by her designs. It felt symbolic, like a claiming of the space, like marking this moment as theirs forever. Afterward, lying in his arms on the cold concrete floor, Ngozi said, "I need to call my mom. Tell her about the boutique. She'll be so proud." "Of course," Tae-Hyun murmured into her hair. "Call her tomorrow. Tonight is just for us." But when tomorrow came, and Ngozi finally called her mother in Lagos, she found herself downplaying Tae-Hyun's role, not mentioning how much money he'd invested, or how quickly it had all happened, or the fact that she didn't actually know what her legal relationship to the business was, because saying those things out loud would make them real, would make them problems. And Ngozi wasn't ready to admit there were problems, not when everything looked so perfect from the outside, not when she was finally living her dream. Even if that dream was starting to feel suspiciously like a cage with beautiful bars. The first slap came on a Tuesday night, exactly 6 months after Ngozi met Tae-Hyun. Later, she would remember that detail with crystal clarity. The day of the week, the exact timeline, the way the Seoul skyline had looked through Tae-Hyun's penthouse windows just before everything changed. She would replay it obsessively in therapy sessions, trying to pinpoint the exact moment she could have left but didn't. It started with a phone. Tae-Hyun had left his cell on the kitchen counter while he showered. Ngozi was making coffee, humming to herself, still riding the high of Seoul's successful first month. The boutique was exceeding expectations. Customers loved the fusion aesthetic, fashion bloggers were posting about it, and she'd already received inquiries about expanding the collection. The phone buzzed, then buzzed again and again. Ngozi glanced at it reflexively, not intending to snoop, just curious about the persistence of whoever was texting. The screen lit up with each notification, and she could see the preview messages without even touching the phone. Mina, last night was amazing. Same time tomorrow? Mina, I'm still thinking about what you did to me. Mina, can't wait to see you again. Oppa Ngozi's hands froze on the coffee pot. Her brain struggled to process what she was seeing. Mina, love hearts. Last night. But last night Tae-Hyun had been with her. They'd had dinner at his penthouse, watched a movie, made love, and he'd fallen asleep with his arm around her waist. Hadn't he? She tried to remember. Had he been with her all night? Or had he gotten up at some point, taken a call, said he needed to handle some business? Her hands moved before her conscious mind could stop them. She picked up the phone. She knew his passcode, he'd given it to her weeks ago, and opened his messages. What she found made her stomach drop to the floor. Mina wasn't alone. There was Suyeon and Jia and women with English names like Rachel and Stephanie. Text threads full of explicit photos, suggestive messages, plans to meet at hotels whose names Ngozi recognized because Tae-Hyun had taken her to some of them. Her hands were shaking so badly she almost dropped the phone. 6 months. She'd been with him for 6 months, and the entire time he'd been sleeping with other women, multiple women, maybe dozens of women. Find something interesting? Ngozi spun around. Tae-Hyun stood in the doorway of the bedroom, a towel around his waist, water still dripping from his hair. His expression was unreadable, not angry, not embarrassed, just waiting. "Who's Mina?" Ngozi asked, her voice shaking. She held up the phone like evidence at a trial. "A friend. A friend who texts you about last night being amazing? A friend who's thinking about what you did to her?" Tae-Hyun walked into the kitchen, completely unbothered by her distress. He took the phone from her hand, not roughly but firmly, and set it back on the counter. "Business associates," he said calmly. "Networking. You know how it is." "Business associates?" Ngozi's voice was rising now, hysteria creeping in. "Tae-Hyun, there are photos. There are plans to meet at hotels. God, there are so many of them. They mean nothing." "Nothing?" She was shouting now, her hands gesturing wildly. "You're sleeping with them, multiple women, while telling me you love me, while funding my boutique, while making you successful," he interrupted, his voice still maddeningly calm. "While giving you everything you've ever wanted, while building your dream. Yes, Ngozi, while doing all of that. That doesn't give you the right to... They're transactions." He said it so matter-of-factly, like he was discussing a business deal. "Business in my world requires certain entertainment. Clients expect it. Associates expect it. It's part of the package. It has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with me." Tears were streaming down her face now. "You told me I was yours. You told me we were building a future together. You said..." "You are mine," Tae-Hyun said, and now there was an edge to his voice, a warning. "Those women are nothing. Transactions. Necessary parts of doing business, but you're different. You're the one I chose, the one I invested in, the one who matters. If I matter, then why..." "Don't be boring, Ngozi." The words hit her like a slap. Boring. He'd called her boring for caring that he was cheating on her, for having the audacity to expect fidelity from the man who claimed to love her. "I'm not being boring," she said, her voice breaking. "I'm being hurt. I'm being betrayed. You made me feel special and chosen, and you are special. Don't you see? Those women get a few hours of my time. You get my investment, my protection, my name attached to yours. You get a boutique and a future, and I don't want those things if they come with you sleeping with half of Seoul." Wrong thing to say. She saw it immediately in the way his expression changed, the careful control slipping, something darker rising to the surface. "You don't want those things?" he repeated softly, dangerously. "The boutique I funded, the dream I made possible, the career I'm building for you, you don't want those things?" "That's not what I..." Then what do you want, Ngozi? To control me? To dictate how I do business? To put limits on what I can and can't do in my world because you have some naive idea about monogamy? I want you to respect me. She was crying openly now, her voice raw. I want you to love me enough to not fuck other women. Don't curse at me. I'll curse if I want to. You're a liar. You're a... The slap came out of nowhere. One moment she was yelling, righteous in her anger, and the next moment her head had snapped to the side, her cheek exploding in pain, her body stumbling backward into the kitchen counter. Silence. Ngozi stood there, one hand pressed to her burning cheek, her brain struggling to process what had just happened. Tae-Hyun had hit her. Actually hit her. His hand had connected with her face hard enough to leave what she was sure would be a mark, hard enough to make her ears ring. She looked at him, and for a moment, she saw something in his face that looked almost like shock, like he was as surprised by what he'd done as she was. Then his face crumpled. Oh, God, he breathed. Ngozi, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean... I would never... He moved toward her, and she flinched backward. The movement seemed to break something in him. He dropped to his knees right there on the kitchen floor, his hands coming up as if in prayer. Please, he said, and his voice was thick with tears. Please, I'm so sorry. My father, when I was growing up, he used to... I swore I'd never be like him, but when you yelled, I reacted. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Ngozi stared down at him, this powerful man on his knees, crying at her feet. Her cheek throbbed, her heart was racing. Every instinct she had screamed at her to leave, to grab her things and run and never look back. But he was crying. Real tears streaming down his face, and he was talking about his father, about abuse he'd suffered, about trauma that made him react in ways he couldn't control. I'll go to therapy, he said desperately, looking up at her with red-rimmed eyes. Real therapy. I'll work on it. I'll be better. You're the only good thing in my life, Ngozi, the only pure thing. Without you, I'm just the monster my father made me. Please don't leave me. She should have left, should have called a taxi, grabbed her things, blocked his number, and never looked back. Should have recognized this for what it was, the beginning of a cycle, the first of many times he would hurt her and then beg for forgiveness. But instead, she found herself reaching down and touching his wet face. It's okay, she heard herself say, even though it wasn't okay. Would never be okay. We'll get through this. He pulled her down into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe, and she let herself believe that this was fixable, that love could heal trauma, that she could be the woman who saved him from himself. I love you, he whispered into her hair. I love you so much. I'll change. I promise I'll change. Just don't leave me. I won't leave, she whispered back. It was a promise she would break and remake dozens of times over the next year, each time getting harder to keep, each time taking more pieces of herself with it. The next day, Tae-Hyun presented her with a business card. Dr. Park Min-jun, he said, placing it carefully on the table between them over breakfast. Trauma specialist. I called him this morning. My first appointment is next week. Ngozi looked at the card, wanted to believe in it, in him, in the possibility of change. Her cheek still hurt, a dull ache that reminded her with every movement that the man sitting across from her had struck her, but he was trying. Wasn't he? Getting help? Taking responsibility? That's good, she said quietly. I'm proud of you. He reached across the table and took her hand. I know you probably want space. Time to think. I understand if you need to stay at your apartment for a while. Maybe that's a good idea, she agreed, part of her grateful for the out, for permission to retreat to her own space and process what had happened. Of course. Whatever you need. He squeezed her hand. But Ngozi, I need you to know that those other women, I'm ending all of that. No more. You're right. It was disrespectful. You deserve better. You deserve everything. She wanted to believe him, wanted it so desperately that she almost convinced herself it was true. She lasted 3 days at her apartment, 3 days of jumping at every sound, of sleeping fitfully, of staring at her phone waiting for him to text. 3 days of Amara calling from Lagos with worry in her voice, asking if everything was okay, if Ngozi was safe. 3 days of lying and saying everything was fine when nothing was fine. On the 4th day, Tae-Hyun showed up at her door with flowers, not a bouquet but an entire garden's worth, and that look in his eyes that made her forget how to breathe. "I miss you," he said simply. "The penthouse is empty without you. I'm empty without you." "You hit me," she said, testing the words, seeing if saying them out loud would make them more real, more unforgivable. "I know, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life." He set the flowers down and took her hands. "I saw Dr. Park. We talked about my childhood, about my triggers, about the patterns I need to break. It's going to be a long process, but I'm committed to it. For you. For us." "Tae-Hyun, I'm not asking you to forgive me yet. I know I have to earn that, but I'm asking you to not give up on us, on what we're building. Please." She should have slammed the door in his face, should have told him that hitting someone you love isn't a trigger, it's a choice, should have recognized that therapy on day 3 doesn't fix patterns formed over a lifetime, but his hands were warm around hers, and her apartment felt cold and empty, and she was so tired of being angry and hurt and alone. "Okay," she whispered. He pulled her into his arms, and she let him. Let herself believe that love was enough, that she could fix him, that this was just a rough patch they'd overcome. That night she went back to his penthouse. The sex was gentle, almost worshipful. Like he was trying to erase the memory of violence with tenderness. And for a few hours, lost in the sensation of his hands on her body and his mouth on her skin, Ngozi almost forgot about the slap and the other women and all the warning signs she was choosing to ignore. Almost. For the next 2 months things were good. Better than good. Tae-Hyun was attentive and careful and showed up with proof of his therapy appointments, receipts, sometimes photos of him in what looked like a doctor's waiting room. He didn't raise his voice even when Ngozi provoked him. He came home every night. The texts from other women stopped, or at least he was better at hiding them. Aso Seoul was thriving. Ngozi was designing new pieces, taking on custom orders, getting featured in local fashion blogs. Her dreams were coming true. And Tae-Hyun was making it all possible. "See?" he said one evening as they reviewed the boutique's financial statements together. "I told you this would work. You're a success, baby. My successful woman." She noticed that he said, "my," not "a." Noticed how all the bank accounts were in his name, how she had to ask him for access to the boutique's finances, how she didn't actually know what the profit margins were or where the money was going, but questioning those things felt ungrateful. He'd given her everything. Who was she to ask for transparency, too? The second slap came 2 weeks later, and this time there was no excuse of being triggered or reactive. This time it was calculated. They were at the boutique after closing. Ngozi had hired an assistant, a young man named Min-ho, who was great with customers and had a good eye for styling. He was professional and kind and completely unthreatening, but Tae-Hyun didn't see it that way. "Fire him," Tae-Hyun said flatly as they walked through the empty boutique together. "What? Why?" "I don't like how he looks at you." Ngozi laughed, thinking he was joking. "Min-ho? He's harmless. He's probably gay. I don't care if he's a eunuch. Fire him." "Tae-Hyun, I need help at the boutique. I can't run it alone, and Min-ho is good at his job. Customers love him." "Then hire someone else. A woman." "I hired the person most qualified for the position. That was Min-ho." She saw his jaw tighten. "Ngozi, I'm not asking. Fire him or I will." "You can't fire him. You don't work here." Wrong thing to say. Again. "I don't work here." Tae-Hyun's voice was dangerously quiet. I don't work here? Who do you think pays for this space? Who funds your designs? Who made this boutique possible? That doesn't mean you control my hiring decisions. The slap was harder this time, harder and more deliberate, with his full weight behind it. Ngozi's head snapped to the side, and she tasted blood where her teeth had cut the inside of her cheek. Everything in this boutique is mine, Tae-Hyun said coldly. The space, the designs, you. Don't ever forget that. He walked out, leaving her standing there with blood in her mouth and tears streaming down her face. Minho was fired the next day. Tae-Hyun's security guards came to the boutique and physically escorted him out, while Ngozi watched, ashamed and helpless. Minho had been confused, hurt, asking what he'd done wrong. "I'm sorry," was all Ngozi could say. "I'm so sorry." That night, Tae-Hyun came to her with flowers and apologies and tears, the same script as before with minor variations. He was sorry. He was working on it. His father had been so much worse. She was the only good thing in his life, and Ngozi, already hollowed out and exhausted, said it was okay, said she forgave him, said they'd get through this, because leaving would mean admitting she'd been wrong. Wrong about him, wrong about their love, wrong about the dream he'd built for her. Leaving would mean abandoning the boutique. Her name was on the door, but his name was on all the legal documents. Leaving would mean starting over from nothing when she'd already come so far, so she stayed, and each time she stayed, it got easier to stay the next time. Easier to rationalize, to excuse, to convince herself that this was just the price of loving someone complicated. The cycle had begun in earnest now, the honeymoon phase where he was perfect and attentive, the tension building where she learned to walk on eggshells, the explosion where he hit or choked or threw things, the apology where he cried and promised to change, and back to the honeymoon. Round and round, faster and faster, until Ngozi forgot what it felt like to exist outside the cycle. 8 months into their relationship, Ngozi left for the first time. It was after he'd slapped her for the 4th time, or was it the 5th? She was losing count. This time she'd packed a bag while he was at work, called Kiyoma, and asked to stay at her place for a few days. "Of course," Kiyoma said immediately. "I'll text you my address in Busan. Take the KTX. I'll pick you up from the station." The train ride south was liberating. Each mile between her and Seoul felt like a weight lifting. By the time she arrived in Busan, Ngozi was almost giddy with freedom. She'd done it. She'd actually left. Kiyoma met her at the station with a fierce hug and no judgment in her eyes. "You don't have to talk about it," she said quietly. "You're safe here. That's all that matters." For 3 days, Ngozi breathed. She walked along Haeundae Beach, ate fresh seafood, slept without flinching at every sound. She called the boutique and told her new assistant, a woman this time per Tae-Hyun's decree, that she needed a few days off. She felt like herself again, like the Ngozi who'd arrived in Seoul 4 years ago with nothing but ambition and talent. Like the woman she'd been before Tae-Hyun had systematically taken her apart and rebuilt her in his image. On the 4th day, he found her. She was at Chiyoma's apartment, making dinner when the doorbell rang. Chiyoma went to answer it, and Ngozi heard her voice raised in protest. "You can't be here. She doesn't want to see you." But Tae-Hyun was already pushing past her, into the apartment, his eyes finding Ngozi immediately. "Baby," he said, and his voice was wrecked, broken. "Please, we need to talk." "Get out," Ngozi said, her hands shaking. "I don't want you here." I know you don't. And I deserve that." He pulled something from his pocket, a business card. "But I need to show you this first. Dr. Park, I've been going twice a week. I'm really doing the work this time, Ngozi. Look." He showed her his phone, appointment confirmations, payment receipts, even a photo of him in what looked like a therapist's office. "I'm changing," he continued, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm confronting my trauma. I'm learning to be better, but I can't do it without you. You're my motivation, my reason. Please don't give up on me now." Kiyoma was standing in the doorway, her expression saying everything her mouth couldn't. Don't believe him? Don't go back, don't fall for this again. But Tae-Hyun was crying, real tears streaming down his perfect face, and he looked so broken, so lost, so much like a man who genuinely wanted to change. I miss you, he whispered. Every night without you is torture. The penthouse is empty, my life is empty. Please, Ngozi, please come home. I need more time, she said weakly. I know. I'm not asking you to come back today. He stepped closer, and she didn't back away. I just need you to not give up on us, on what we've built together. Can you promise me that? That you won't give up? She should have said no. Should have told him that some things once broken can't be fixed. Should have listened to Kiyoma's silent pleas to stand strong. But his hand was reaching for hers, and her traitorous body remembered how it felt to be held by him, and she was so tired of being angry and scared and alone. I won't give up, she heard herself say. His smile was brilliant. Thank you, baby. That's all I needed to hear. He kissed her then, gentle and sweet and full of promise, and Ngozi kissed him back. Felt herself being pulled back into his orbit despite every warning sign, despite Kiyoma's horrified expression, despite knowing deep down that nothing had actually changed. I should go, Tae-Hyun said, pulling back. Give you the space you need, but when you're ready to come home, I'll be waiting. He left, and Ngozi stood there in Kiyoma's apartment, feeling the chains wrap around her again, even though she was hundreds of miles from Seoul. Ngozi, Kiyoma said carefully, please tell me you're not going back to him. But Ngozi was already texting him, already telling him she'd be home tomorrow, already falling back into the pattern because it was easier than facing the terrifying alternative of starting over. It's going to be different this time, she said, not looking at Kiyoma. He's really getting help. He's lying, Kiyoma said flatly. Dr. Park Min-jun died 3 years ago. I looked it up after you mentioned him months ago. There is no therapist. Those appointments are fake. Ngozi's blood ran cold. No, you must be thinking of a different Dr. Park. There's only one Dr. Park Min-jun who was a trauma specialist in Seoul, and he's dead. Tae-Hyun is lying to you, Ngozi. He's been lying from the beginning. But even faced with this evidence, with proof of his manipulation, Ngozi couldn't accept it, because accepting it would mean accepting that everything, the love, the boutique, the dreams, all of it, was built on lies. You're wrong, she said stubbornly. You must be wrong. The next day she took the KTX back to Seoul, back to Tae-Hyun's penthouse, back to the cycle, and when he opened the door and pulled her into his arms, when he carried her to the bedroom and made love to her like she was the most precious thing in the world, when he whispered promises against her skin about change and therapy, and forever, Ngozi chose to believe, because believing was easier than facing the truth. 2 months after returning from Busan, Ngozi sat in front of her laptop for what had become a weekly ritual of humiliation. Therapy with Dr. Hannah via Zoom, the only therapist she could afford now that all her money flowed through Tae-Hyun's accounts, the only person who still bothered to tell her the truth, even when she didn't want to hear it. Dr. Hannah's face filled the screen, and even through the digital distance, Ngozi could see the exhaustion in her mother's best friend's eyes, the frustration, the disappointment. So, Dr. Hannah began, adjusting her designer glasses, you went back. It wasn't a question. Yes, Ngozi said quietly, pulling Tae-Hyun's sweater tighter around herself. She'd taken to wearing his clothes like armor, like if she surrounded herself with him enough, she could become the woman he wanted her to be. Dr. Hannah was silent for a long moment, and Ngozi watched her pinch the bridge of her nose, a gesture that had become familiar over their sessions together. He's in therapy, Ngozi added quickly, defensively. He's really working on his issues this time. Show me the therapist's information. What? The therapist, Dr. Park, wasn't it? Show me his credentials, his office address, proof of these appointments you keep mentioning. Ngozi's stomach clenched. I don't have all that information. Tae-Hyun handles... Of course he does. Dr. Hannah's voice was sharp. Ngozi, I did some research. Dr. Park Min-jun died 3 years ago. No, that's... Kioma said the same thing, but it must be a different... There was only one trauma specialist by that name in Seoul, and he's dead. Which means either your boyfriend is seeing a ghost or he's lying to you. Dr. Hannah leaned closer to her camera. Which do you think is more likely? Ngozi felt tears burning behind her eyes. Maybe it's a different therapist. Maybe he just said Dr. Park but meant someone else. Listen to yourself. Listen to the excuses you're making for a man who hits you. He doesn't. It's not like that. Then what is it like? Dr. Hannah's voice rose. Explain it to me, Ngozi. Make me understand how a man who loves you leaves bruises on your body. You don't understand him like I do, Ngozi said, the words automatic now, rehearsed from all the times she'd defended him to Amara, to Kioma, to herself. He had a terrible childhood. His father was abusive. He's trying to break those patterns. And making you the victim of them in the process. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. Dr. Hannah stood up from her desk, and Ngozi could see her pacing in the frame. You know what I found out? I called your mother last week. Ngozi's blood ran cold. You what? I've known you since you were 7 years old, Ngozi. I braided your hair for your first day of secondary school. I helped you prepare your application for design school. I celebrated with your family when you got accepted. And now I'm watching you destroy yourself for a man who treats you like property, and you expect me to just sit here and take notes. You had no right. I had every right. Your mother is my best friend, and she asked me, begged me to tell her the truth about what's happening to you in Seoul. Dr. Hannah's voice cracked slightly. Do you know what she asked me, Ngozi? She asked me, Hannah, is my daughter going to die in Seoul? And I couldn't answer her. Because I don't know. Because you won't save yourself. The words hit Ngozi like physical blows. Her mother knew. Her mother, half a world away in Lagos, knew that her daughter was being destroyed piece by piece by a man who claimed to love her. I'm not going to die, Ngozi said weakly. You're being dramatic. Am I? You came to session 6 with a bruised jaw, session 11 with fingerprints on your neck. Last session, you couldn't turn your head properly because of what he did to you. So tell me, Ngozi, at what point does being dramatic become watching you die in slow motion? Tears were streaming down Ngozi's face now. He's getting better. He is. The violence is less frequent. Less frequent. Less frequent. Dr. Hannah laughed, but there was no humor in it. Do you hear yourself? You're measuring progress by how often he assaults you. That's not progress, Ngozi. That's just a slower death. What do you want me to do? Ngozi shouted, her composure finally cracking. Leave? Just walk away from everything? The boutique? The life we've built? The investment he's made in me? Yes, exactly that. I can't. The boutique is in his name. The lease, the business registration, everything. I'd lose everything I've worked for. You've already lost everything that matters. Dr. Hannah's voice went quiet, which was somehow worse than the shouting. You've lost yourself, Ngozi. The woman I knew, brilliant, ambitious, full of light, she's gone. And what's left is this hollow thing that flinches at shadows and makes excuses for monsters. That's not fair. Fair? You want to talk about fair? It's not fair that your mother cries herself to sleep because she can't protect you. It's not fair that I have to sit here session after session watching you choose him over yourself. It's not fair that the little girl I used to braid hair for has been reduced to this. Dr. Hannah sat back down, and Ngozi could see tears in her eyes now too. I can't keep doing this, Dr. Hannah said finally, watching you self-destruct, taking your money, his money, while you use therapy as permission to stay instead of motivation to leave. Dr. Hannah, please, no. I'm not terminating our sessions yet, but I'm done being gentle. I'm done pretending that there's some magic combination of words that will make you see what everyone else sees. So here's the truth. He's going to kill you. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually one of these episodes will go too far and you'll end up a statistic. Another woman who loved the wrong man and paid for it with her life. Ngozi was sobbing now, her whole body shaking. I don't know how to leave. Yes, you do. You pack a bag. You get on a plane. You go back to Lagos and let your mother take care of you while you rebuild. That's how you leave. But the boutique. Fuck the boutique. Dr. Hannah rarely cursed, and the word landed with extra weight. I'm sorry, but I have to say it. Fuck the boutique. Fuck the designs. Fuck everything he's given you, because it's all a cage, Ngozi. A beautiful, expensive cage, but a cage nonetheless. And you're so busy admiring the bars that you can't see you're dying inside it. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of Dr. Hannah's words hanging between them across the digital distance. I need you to do something for me, Dr. Hannah said finally. I need you to write down every time he hurts you. Date, time, what happened, keep a record, hide it somewhere he won't find it, because when you're ready to leave, if you ever get ready to leave, you'll need evidence. Why would I need? Because men like him don't let go easily, because he'll try to convince you it wasn't that bad, that you're remembering wrong, that you're being dramatic. And you'll need proof that you're not. Ngozi nodded numbly, knowing she wouldn't do it, knowing that creating evidence would make it real in a way she wasn't ready to face. Our time is up, Dr. Hannah said, glancing at her clock. Same time next week? Yes, Ngozi whispered. Ngozi? Dr. Hannah's voice softened slightly. I love you. Your mother loves you. We want you to come home. We want you to be safe. Please think about that. The screen went black, and Ngozi sat there in the silence of Tae-Hyun's penthouse, surrounded by luxury that felt increasingly like a mausoleum. Her phone buzzed. Tae-Hyun. Therapy done? How was it? She stared at the message, wondering what he'd do if she told him the truth. If she said her therapist thought he was going to kill her, if she admitted that she was keeping a record of his violence. Ngozi. Fine. Same as always. Tae-Hyun. Good. I'm bringing dinner home. Your favorite. Jollof rice from that Nigerian place you like. Despite everything, despite Dr. Hannah's words still echoing in her head, Ngozi felt a flicker of warmth. He remembered her favorite food. He was bringing her dinner. These small gestures still felt like love, like proof that underneath the violence was a man who cared. Ngozi. Thank you. See you soon. She closed her laptop and went to fix her makeup, to hide the evidence of crying before he got home. Because she'd learned that showing weakness, showing that therapy upset her, would only make things harder. So she painted on a smile and pretended everything was fine. It was what she was best at now. Month 14. The pattern had solidified into something almost predictable. Good weeks where Tae-Hyun was attentive and generous, and the violence felt like a distant memory. Then bad days, triggered by work stress or Ngozi talking to another man, or simply his mood shifting like weather, where his hands became weapons and his words became knives. The boutique was thriving in ways that should have made Ngozi proud, but instead just made her feel hollow. She'd been featured in Vogue Korea. Fashion influencers wore her designs. Celebrities requested custom pieces. On paper, she was living her dream. In reality, she was dying by inches. She'd stopped seeing her friends as much. Kioma's pointed questions about bruises were exhausting. Amara's calls from Lagos felt like accusations. It was easier to isolate, to exist only in Tae-Hyun's world where the rules were clear even if they were cruel. You've been quiet lately, Tae-Hyun observed one evening as they ate dinner in his penthouse. Is something bothering you? Yes, Ngozi wanted to say. Everything is bothering me. You're bothering me. This life is bothering me. I don't recognize myself anymore, and I don't know how to find my way back. Just tired, she said instead. The boutique has been busy. You should hire more help. The last time I tried that, you made me fire him. Wrong thing to say. She saw it immediately in the way his jaw tightened, the way his grip on his fork became white-knuckled. Minho was inappropriate with you, Tae-Hyun said carefully. Too carefully. I was protecting you. He complimented a design, That's not inappropriate. He looked at you like he wanted to fuck you. You see that in every man who looks at me. Because I know how men think. Tae-Hyun set down his fork deliberately. I know what they're thinking when they see you. What they want to do to you, and I won't allow it. You won't allow it, Ngozi repeated flatly. Like I'm your property. You are mine. There it was. The truth that lay beneath all the pretty words and expensive gifts. She wasn't his partner, she was his possession. I'm a person, Tae-Hyun, not an object you own. He stood up from the table, and Ngozi instinctively flinched. Hated herself for flinching, hated him for making her into someone who flinched, but he didn't hit her. Instead, he walked to the window, looked out at Seoul glittering below them. You think you'd have any of this without me? He asked quietly. The boutique, the success, the recognition. Where would you be, Ngozi? Still working at that textile shop, designing in your spare time, hoping someone would notice you? I would have made it eventually. Eventually. He laughed. Eventually, you'd be 40 years old with a portfolio full of designs no one ever saw and a career that never materialized. I gave you everything, and you're so ungrateful you can't even see it. I'm not ungrateful. I'm just tired of being treated like I owe you my entire existence because you invested money in me. He turned to face her, and the expression on his face made her stomach drop. It wasn't anger. It was something colder, calculating. Money, he repeated. You think this is about money? Ngozi, I own you. The boutique is in my name. Your designs are registered under my company. That apartment you think is yours? I pay the rent. Your phone, your clothes, your food, all of it comes from me. Without me, you have nothing. You are nothing. The words landed like punches, each one driving home a truth she'd been avoiding. She'd let him systematically take control of every aspect of her life until she was completely dependent on him. She had no savings. All the boutique's profits went into accounts she couldn't access. She had no assets in her own name. She had no financial independence whatsoever. She was trapped. I could leave, she said, but it sounded weak even to her own ears. And go where? Do what? You have no money, no resources. Your visa is sponsored through the boutique, which I control. You leave me, you leave Korea. Is that what you want? To run back to Lagos with your tail between your legs, admit to everyone that you failed? Leaving you wouldn't be failure, wouldn't it? He crossed back to her, and this time when she flinched, he noticed. Look at you. Scared of your own shadow, scared of me. This is what you've become, Ngozi. And you did it to yourself by being so desperate to be loved that you'd accept it from anyone, even a monster like me. Tears streamed down her face. Why are you being so cruel? I'm not being cruel. I'm being honest. He crouched down beside her chair, forced her to look at him. I love you. In my own fucked up way, I do, but I'm not a good man. I've never pretended to be. You're the one who keeps trying to turn me into something I'm not because you're so desperate to believe in fairy tales. You wanted Prince Charming. You got a wolf instead. That's not my fault. That's yours for being stupid enough to ignore all the warnings. He stood up and walked toward the bedroom, paused at the doorway. Are you coming to bed? Or are you going to sit there crying all night? Ngozi sat there for a long time after he left, staring at her plate of half-eaten food, feeling the weight of her choices pressing down on her like concrete. She should call someone. Amara, Kioma, Dr. Hannah. She should pack a bag and leave tonight while he was sleeping. She should do any of 1,000 things that weren't walking into that bedroom and pretending everything was fine, but it was so much easier to pretend. So much easier to lie down next to him and accept his half-hearted apology and let him fuck her into forgetting everything he'd said. So that's what she did, and hated herself a little more for it. Month 15 brought a new humiliation. Ngozi came home early from the boutique one afternoon. A vendor meeting had been cancelled, and she thought she'd surprise Tae-Hyun with an impromptu lunch together. She had her key to his penthouse, let herself in quietly, thinking maybe she'd find him in his office on a call and they could order delivery. Instead, she found him in their bedroom with another woman. Not just any woman. Minji, the woman from the club, the one he'd hit for touching him. She was naked in their bed, and Tae-Hyun was above her, inside her, his hands gripping her hips as he moved. Ngozi stood in the doorway, frozen. Her brain couldn't process what she was seeing. This was their bed, their space, the place where he whispered that she was the only one, the special one, the one who mattered. Tae-Hyun looked up and saw her. Their eyes met. He didn't stop. "Ngozi," he said, his voice barely breathless, "you're home early." That was all. No shame, no panic. Just a casual observation, as if she'd walked in on him reading a book instead of fucking another woman in their bed. Minji looked over her shoulder, and Ngozi saw satisfaction in her eyes. Triumph. Like she'd won some competition Ngozi hadn't known they were having. "Get out," Ngozi whispered. "I'm almost finished," Tae-Hyun said, and continued moving. The casual cruelty of it broke something in Ngozi. She turned and ran, out of the bedroom, out of the penthouse, into the elevator, and down to the street. She ran until her lungs burned and her designer heels gave her blisters, and she couldn't run anymore. She ended up at a pojangmatcha, a street food tent, in a part of Gangnam she didn't recognize. She sat on a plastic stool and ordered soju and didn't care that she was crying in public, that people were staring, that she was a mess. Her phone buzzed incessantly, Tae-Hyun calling, Tae-Hyun texting. She ignored it all. An hour later, he found her anyway. His driver must have tracked her location through her phone. He slid onto the stool beside her, took in her tear-stained face and empty soju bottles. "You're being dramatic," he said mildly. "Dramatic." Ngozi laughed, but it came out broken. "You were fucking another woman, in our bed, and I'm being dramatic. She means nothing. You couldn't even stop when you saw me, you just kept going. Because stopping would have given it importance it doesn't have." He ordered his own soju, like they were having a normal conversation. "It was just sex, Ngozi. A physical release. It has nothing to do with you and me. It has everything to do with us. You were inside her where you've been inside me. In our bed." "My bed," he corrected. "My penthouse. My space. I'll do what I want in it." Ngozi stared at him, and for the first time she really saw him. Not the man she wanted him to be, not the potential buried under trauma, not the fairy tale prince who would change for love. Just him. A cruel, selfish man who saw her as property and other women as entertainment and love as ownership. "I can't do this anymore," she said quietly. "Yes, you can. You will. Because where else are you going to go? I hate you." "No, you don't. You hate yourself. I'm just the mirror showing you what you've become." He downed his soju in one shot. "Come home. This is beneath you." "I'm not going back there. Not tonight." "Fine. I'll have my driver take you to your apartment. But Ngozi..." He leaned close, his breath warm against her ear. "This is what I am. I don't apologize for it. I never have. You're the one who keeps choosing to stay despite knowing exactly what I am. So who's really to blame here?" He left cash on the counter and walked away. The driver appeared moments later, silent and professional, opening the car door for her like she was still the girlfriend of someone important, instead of a woman who'd just been broken in public. She got in the car because she was too drunk and too defeated to figure out another option. She stayed away for 2 days, ignored his calls and texts and the flowers delivered to her door, tried to figure out what to do, where to go, how to extricate herself from a life that had wrapped around her like chains. On the 3rd day, Amara showed up at her apartment door. "Your friend Kioma called me," Amara said, pushing past Ngozi into the small space. "Told me what happened, so I got on a plane. Amara, you didn't have to." "I absolutely did." Amara dropped her bag and turned to face Ngozi, and the expression on her face was pure heartbreak. "Look at you. Just look at you, Ngozi." Ngozi caught sight of herself in the mirror by the door. She'd lost weight. Too much weight. Her clothes hung off her frame. Her hair, usually maintained with care, was in desperate need of attention. Her eyes were hollow, haunted. She looked like a woman drowning. "I'm fine," she said automatically. No, you're not fine. You're the opposite of fine. Amara grabbed her hands. Babe, I love you. You're my sister. And I'm begging you, come home with me, come back to Lagos, let's get you away from him. I can't just leave, the boutique, fuck the boutique, Amara shouted, and Ngozi flinched at the volume. I'm sorry, but seriously, fuck the boutique. It's not worth your life, it's not worth your soul. Ngozi, he had another woman in your bed. He didn't even have the decency to stop when you walked in. What more do you need to see before you accept that this man doesn't love you? He does love me, in his way. His way is toxic. His way is abuse. His way is turning you into this hollow shell of the woman you used to be. Amara was crying now, too. You used to be so bright, Ngozi, so full of life and dreams and hope, and now you're this, jumping at shadows, making excuses for a man who treats you like garbage. Where's the Ngozi who told me she was going to conquer the world? She's still here, Ngozi whispered. Is she? Because I don't see her. All I see is a woman who's given up everything, her dreams, her dignity, her self-respect, for a man who doesn't even have the decency to be faithful. You don't understand. It's complicated. It's not complicated. Amara's voice was desperate now. It's actually very simple. He hurts you. You stay. He hurts you worse. You stay. Eventually he's going to hurt you in a way you can't come back from, and I'll be in Lagos planning your funeral, wishing I'd done more to save you. You're being dramatic. Am I? You have bruises, Ngozi. Plural. He threw you down the stairs last month. Don't think Chioma didn't tell me. You had broken ribs, and you went back to him. He was sorry. He's always sorry. Amara grabbed Ngozi's shoulders, forced her to look directly at her. And you always forgive him, and the cycle continues. When does it end, Ngozi? When does it stop? I don't know, Ngozi sobbed. I don't know how to leave. Everything I have is his. The boutique, my visa, my life, it's all tied to him. If I leave, I lose everything. If you stay, you lose yourself. You've already lost most of yourself. How much more are you willing to sacrifice? They sat on the floor together, holding each other while Ngozi cried, deep, wrenching sobs that felt like they were being torn from her chest. Amara rocked her like a child, murmuring comfort in Igbo, and for a moment, Ngozi felt safe, seen, loved in a way that didn't hurt. Come home with me, Amara whispered. Please, just for a while. Get some distance. Clear your head. Let your mom take care of you. Okay, Ngozi said. And in that moment, she meant it. She would go. She would leave. She would save herself. But then her phone rang. Tae-Hyun's name on the screen. She should ignore it. Should let it ring. Should block his number and pack a bag and get on a plane before she changed her mind. But her hand moved on its own, answering the call. Ngozi. Tae-Hyun's voice was soft, broken. Baby, please, come home. I'm so sorry. I sent Minji away. I told her never to contact me again. It was a mistake, a terrible mistake. Please, I need you. Ngozi, don't, Amara warned, seeing the shift in her expression. But Ngozi was already standing up, already moving toward her bedroom to change clothes. I'm on my way, she said into the phone. Don't do this, Amara begged. Ngozi, please don't do this. I have to, Ngozi said, and she couldn't even explain why. Just that she had to, that leaving felt impossible in a way that staying, as toxic as it was, felt inevitable. If you go back to him now, Amara said quietly, don't call me next time. I can't watch you do this to yourself anymore. I can't be the person you cry to before going back to the man who makes you cry. I love you too much to be complicit in your destruction. Amara, I mean it, Ngozi. You walk out that door, you're choosing him over everyone who actually loves you. Over me. Over your mother. Over yourself. And I can't be part of that anymore. Ngozi looked at her best friend, her sister in all but blood, and saw the finality in her expression. This was it. The line drawn in the sand. She should choose Amara, should choose herself. But Tae-Hyun was waiting. I'm sorry, Ngozi whispered and walked out the door. She heard Amara's sob behind her but didn't turn back. Couldn't turn back. Because turning back would mean facing the truth of what she was doing, and she wasn't strong enough for that truth yet. So she went back to Tae-Hyun, let him hold her and apologize and promise to change. Let him make love to her in the same bed where he'd fucked Min-ji, because christening it with new memories was easier than accepting what had happened there. And when she woke up the next morning in his arms, she told herself this was love. This was what fighting for a relationship looked like. This was the price of loving someone complicated. The lies were getting easier to tell, to him, to herself, to everyone. That's how she knew she was dying. Month 16 arrived with the weight of inevitability. Ngozi had stopped counting the days between incidents, stopped hoping for change, stopped believing in the fairy tale version of their relationship that she'd once clung to so desperately. She existed now in a state of perpetual bracing, waiting for the next explosion, the next apology, the next cycle to begin again. Amara had kept her word. She'd stopped calling, stopped texting, stopped being available when Ngozi needed someone to talk to at 3 a.m. The silence from Lagos felt like another death, another piece of herself lost to the machine of Tae-Hyun's love. Kyoma still tried, but even she was pulling away. Their coffee meetings had become shorter, more strained, full of things neither of them could say. Kyoma's eyes held a sadness now whenever she looked at Ngozi, the kind of sadness reserved for funerals and lost causes. The boutique was more successful than ever. Vogue had done a full feature. Korean celebrities were wearing her designs to award shows. She'd been invited to show at Seoul Fashion Week. On Instagram, her life looked like a dream. Beautiful clothes, beautiful spaces, a beautiful relationship with a powerful man who adored her. In reality, she was a ghost haunting her own existence. "We need to talk about Amara's visit," Tae-Hyun said one evening as they ate dinner in his penthouse. 3 weeks had passed since Amara had flown back to Lagos, heartbroken and defeated. 3 weeks of Ngozi existing in the strange liminal space between staying and leaving, between accepting her reality and fighting it. What about it? Ngozi pushed rice around her plate, not hungry despite the expensive meal Tae-Hyun had ordered from her favorite restaurant. "She tried to convince you to leave me." It wasn't a question. Of course he knew. He always knew everything. She'd learned over the past months that he monitored her phone, her emails, probably had cameras in her apartment that she'd never found. Privacy was another thing she'd traded away without realizing it. "She's worried about me," Ngozi said carefully. "That's what friends do. Friends support your choices. They don't try to sabotage your happiness." "My happiness," Ngozi repeated flatly. "Is that what this is?" Wrong tone. She saw it immediately in the way his jaw tightened, the way his grip on his chopsticks turned white-knuckled. "Are you saying you're not happy?" His voice was dangerously quiet. "I'm saying I'm tired, Tae-Hyun. I'm tired of walking on eggshells. I'm tired of your moods. I'm tired of never knowing which version of you I'm going to get, the one who loves me or the one who hurts me. I wouldn't have to hurt you if you didn't provoke me." There it was. The logic that had become so familiar, she sometimes believed it herself. If she was just better, more understanding, more careful with her words, he wouldn't have to react the way he did. His violence was somehow her responsibility to prevent. "I'm not provoking you by having friends who care about me. You're provoking me by listening to them when they tell you to leave, by entertaining the idea that you'd be better off without me." He set down his chopsticks with deliberate care. "After everything I've done for you, after all I've invested in you, you'd just throw it away because some bitter woman in Lagos told you to?" Amara isn't bitter. She's alone. Single, watching her best friend succeed while she stagnates in a dead-end job in Lagos. Of course she wants to drag you down to her level. That's not fair. Amara has always supported. Amara wants you to fail. Tae-Hyun interrupted. "She wants you to come crawling back to Lagos with your tail between your legs so she can feel superior. Poor Ngozi. She thought she could make it in Seoul, but she couldn't handle the pressure. Is that what you want? To prove her right?" You're twisting everything. I'm telling you the truth. The truth you're too naive to see because you still believe in the fantasy of unconditional friendship. People aren't unconditional, Ngozi. Everyone wants something. At least I'm honest about what I want from you. And what's that? She heard the bitterness in her own voice. What do you want from me, Tae-Hyun? Everything. He said it simply, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Your talent, your body, your loyalty, your complete and absolute devotion. I want to own every piece of you. And in return, I give you success, security, and a life most women would kill for. Most women would run from what you're describing. Most women are stupid. You're smarter than that. You understand that real love isn't pretty. It's possessive and consuming and sometimes painful. But it's real. Not like the sanitized version your friends keep trying to sell you. Ngozi stared at him, wondering when she'd stopped being horrified by speeches like this. When had his twisted logic started making a sick kind of sense? When had she accepted that love and pain were the same thing? I should go, she said quietly. I have an early meeting at the boutique tomorrow. Stay. It wasn't a request. Tae-Hyun, I need to get some sleep in my own bed. I said stay. His hand shot out and grabbed her wrist, not hard enough to bruise yet, but firm enough to make his point. We're not done talking. There's nothing left to say. There's plenty left to say, like why you've been so distant lately, why you flinch when I touch you, why you look at me sometimes like you're planning your escape. I'm not. Don't lie to me. His grip tightened. I know you, Ngozi. I know every thought in your head, every emotion on your face. You think you can hide from me, but you can't. So tell me the truth. Are you planning to leave me? She should lie, should tell him everything was fine, that she loved him, that she'd never leave. But she was so tired of lying. So tired of pretending. So tired of everything. Sometimes I think about it, she admitted. Sometimes I imagine what it would be like to be free of you. The slap came fast, snapping her head to the side. But this time it wasn't the end of the violence. This time he stood up, pulled her up by her wrist, and shoved her backward. Free of me, he snarled. You wouldn't last a week without me. You'd be nothing. You are nothing without me. Let go. But he wasn't letting go. He was dragging her toward the staircase that led from his main floor to the upper level of the penthouse. Ngozi tried to plant her feet, tried to resist, but he was stronger, always stronger. You want to leave? Fine, leave. See how far you get. They were at the top of the stairs now, and Ngozi felt panic rising in her throat. The stairs were steep, metal and glass. Designer dangerous. Tae-Hyun, please what? Please forgive you for being ungrateful? Please let you disrespect everything I've built for you? He shoved her again, and this time there was nothing behind her but air. Ngozi felt herself falling backward, her arms windmilling uselessly, time seeming to slow as she tumbled down the stairs. She hit the steps hard, her shoulder first, then her ribs, then her hip. The pain was immediate and all-consuming, stealing the breath from her lungs. She landed at the bottom in a heap, unable to move, unable to breathe, unable to do anything but lie there in agony as Tae-Hyun stood at the top of the stairs, looking down at her with an expression she couldn't read. Then he was running down the stairs, his face transforming from cold anger to horrified concern. Oh God, Ngozi! Ngozi! He dropped to his knees beside her, his hands hovering over her body like he was afraid to touch her. Can you hear me? Can you breathe? She tried to respond, but inhaling sent white-hot pain through her chest. Something was broken. Multiple somethings. She could feel it. I'm calling an ambulance, Tae-Hyun said, already pulling out his phone. Just hold on, baby. Hold on. Through the pain, through the shock, Ngozi felt a strange clarity descend. This was it. The moment Dr. Hannah had warned her about. The moment Amara had predicted. The moment when his violence crossed the line from abuse to attempted murder. She should tell the paramedics the truth, should let them document his crime, should press charges and finally break free. But even as the thought formed, she knew she wouldn't do it. Because that would mean admitting defeat, admitting that everyone who'd warned her had been right, admitting that she'd wasted 18 months of her life on a man who'd just thrown her down the stairs. So when the paramedics arrived and asked what happened, she heard herself say, "I fell. I tripped on the stairs. It was an accident." And Tae-Hyun, standing behind them with tears streaming down his face, nodded in agreement. "She fell," he confirmed. "I tried to catch her, but I wasn't fast enough." The lie bound them together more tightly than any truth ever could. 2 broken ribs, a fractured collarbone, severe bruising to her hip and shoulder. The doctor at the hospital looked at her with knowing eyes, the kind of eyes that had seen too many women with injuries that didn't match their stories. "These injuries are consistent with a fall," the doctor said carefully, "but they're also consistent with being pushed. If there's something you need to tell me, Ngozi, I can help you. There are resources, safe houses." "I fell," Ngozi repeated, staring at the ceiling tiles instead of meeting the doctor's gaze. "It was clumsy of me. The stairs in my boyfriend's penthouse are very steep." The doctor was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a card, placing it on the bedside table. "Domestic violence hotline," she said softly. 24/7, anonymous, just in case you ever need it. After the doctor left, Ngozi stared at the card for a long time. It was cream-colored with simple black text. Such an innocent-looking thing to represent such a catastrophic failure of love. She reached for it, thinking she might put it in her purse, just in case, just as a backup plan. But then Tae-Hyun walked back into the room. He'd stepped out to make calls, to arrange for the best specialists, to make sure Ngozi had a private room and round-the-clock care, and she found herself crumpling the card in her fist, hiding it from view. "How are you feeling?" he asked, sitting carefully on the edge of her bed. His eyes were still red from crying, and he looked smaller somehow, diminished by guilt. "Like I fell down a flight of stairs." "Ngozi, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean, when I pushed you, I didn't think—" "You pushed me," she repeated. "You actually pushed me down the stairs." "I was angry. You were talking about leaving, and I reacted. I'm so sorry. This is the wake-up call I needed. I'm going to get serious help, real help. I'm going to fix this." She'd heard this speech so many times it had lost all meaning, but looking at him now, genuinely distraught, genuinely scared of what he'd done, she wanted to believe him, needed to believe him, because the alternative was accepting that she'd nearly died at the hands of the man she loved. "I could have died," she said quietly. "I know. And I would have died too. I can't live without you, Ngozi. I know I'm fucked up. I know I hurt you. But I love you more than I've ever loved anything, and I'm going to prove it. I'm going to be better. I swear on everything, I'm going to be better." He was crying again, his head bowed, his shoulders shaking. And despite the pain radiating through her body, despite knowing that he'd put her here, Ngozi found herself reaching out with her good arm and touching his head. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." It was all he needed. He looked up at her with such gratitude, such relief, such desperate love that it almost justified everything, almost made the broken bones worth it. He stayed with her all night, sleeping in the uncomfortable hospital chair, holding her hand whenever she woke up in pain. And in the morning, when the nurse came to check her vitals, Ngozi watched Tae-Hyun charm the staff, watched him play the role of devoted boyfriend, watched him craft the narrative that this was a tragic accident with no one to blame but fate, and she said nothing to contradict him. Later, after she'd been discharged with prescriptions for pain medication and stern instructions about rest, she threw away the doctor's card in a hospital bathroom trash can. One more lifeline discarded. One more chance at freedom rejected, one more step deeper into the quicksand. Recovery was slow and painful. Tae-Hyun was excessively attentive during those first few weeks, bringing her meals, helping her shower, carefully dosing her pain medication, sleeping on her uninjured side so he wouldn't accidentally hurt her in the night. It was almost like the early days of their relationship, when he'd been perfect and she'd been falling. Almost. Except now she knew the truth, knew what lay beneath the attentiveness, knew that this kindness was just another phase in the cycle, that eventually the tension would build again and the explosion would come and she'd find herself back in this position, broken and hurting and making excuses for why she stayed. But she was too tired to fight it, too broken, physically and emotionally, to imagine an alternative. Kioma came to visit once, bringing soup and judgmental silence. She didn't ask what really happened, didn't need to. The truth was written in every careful movement Ngozi made, every wince of pain, every hollow assurance that she was fine. "Your mother called me," Kioma said quietly as she ladled soup into a bowl. "She's worried. She wants to fly out here." "No," Ngozi said immediately. "Tell her I'm fine. It was just an accident. Ngozi, please, Kioma, I can't deal with my mother right now. She'll want me to come home and I can't. I'm not ready." "When will you be ready?" Kioma set down the ladle and turned to face her. "When he breaks more than just your ribs? When he puts you in the hospital for weeks instead of days? When he kills you?" "He's not going to kill me." "He threw you down the stairs. I fell." "Stop lying to me!" Kioma's voice cracked. "Stop lying to yourself. I know what happened, Ngozi. Everyone knows what happened. And we're all just waiting for the call that says you didn't survive the next accident. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. You love him. He loves you. But his love is killing you, and you're too afraid to save yourself." Kioma sat beside her on the couch, careful not to jostle her injuries. "I can't watch this anymore. I can't be the person you call after each incident to help you process what happened. I'm not strong enough." "So you're abandoning me too?" "No, I'm setting a boundary. I love you, Ngozi. You're my friend. But I won't help you destroy yourself anymore. When you're ready to leave, really leave, not just talk about it, call me. I'll help you disappear. I'll hide you from him. I'll do whatever it takes. But until then, I can't be part of this." After Kioma left, Ngozi sat in the silence of her apartment, surrounded by the soup she wouldn't eat and the medication she was taking too much of, and the wreckage of her life. Her phone buzzed with her weekly therapy reminder. The Zoom session with Dr. Hannah was in an hour. She should cancel. Should tell Dr. Hannah she was too injured, too tired, too broken to face another lecture about leaving. But canceling would raise questions, would invite concern, would make everything harder. So she carefully positioned herself in front of her laptop, arranged her blankets to hide the worst of the bruising, and waited for Dr. Hannah's face to appear on screen. When it did, Dr. Hannah took one look at her and went very still. "What happened?" "I fell down some stairs, broke 2 ribs and my collarbone. I'm okay though." "You fell." Dr. Hannah's voice was flat. "Or you were pushed." "Does it matter?" "Does it?" Dr. Hannah cut herself off, took a long breath. "Ngozi, I've been patient. I've been professional. I've maintained boundaries even when I wanted to reach through this screen and shake you. But I'm done. Do you hear me? I'm done being patient." "Dr. Hannah, no. You listen. I called your mother last week. Did Kioma tell you?" Ngozi's stomach dropped. "You had no right?" "I had every right. She's my best friend, and she called me crying, asking if her daughter was going to die in Seoul. And you know what I told her? I told her I didn't know." "Because I don't. Because you're determined to martyr yourself for a man who's trying to kill you." Tears were already streaming down Ngozi's face. "He didn't mean—" "Stop. Just stop with the excuses. He threw you down the stairs, Ngozi. He could have killed you. Do you understand that? You could be dead right now instead of sitting here with broken bones making excuses for him." "I know. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're still planning to stay with him, still convinced you can love him into being a better person, still suffering from Disney princess psychosis so severe that you literally can't see reality anymore." "That's not fair." "Fair?" Dr. Hannah stood up from her desk, and Ngozi could see her hands shaking. "You want to talk about fair?" It's not fair that I have to sit here session after session watching you self-destruct. It's not fair that your mother can't sleep because she's terrified of getting a call from the Seoul police. It's not fair that your friends are traumatized from witnessing your abuse and being powerless to stop it. But here we are. What do you want me to do? Ngozi sobbed. Just leave? Walk away from everything? Yes, that's exactly what I want you to do. Leave. Get on a plane. Come home. Let people who actually love you, who love you without hurting you, take care of you while you heal. The boutique? Fuck the boutique. Dr. Hannah rarely cursed, and the word landed with extra weight. I'm sorry, Ngozi, but I have to say it again. Fuck the boutique. It's a prison, not a dream. He's built you a beautiful cage and convinced you it's freedom. But look at yourself. You can barely move without pain. You have broken bones from being thrown downstairs. Is that freedom? You don't understand what it's like. Then help me understand. Explain to me how this is love. Explain to me how a man who throws you downstairs deserves your loyalty. Explain to me why you're willing to die for him. Ngozi couldn't answer, couldn't articulate the tangled web of trauma and attachment and fear that kept her trapped. Couldn't explain how leaving felt impossible even when staying felt fatal. I spoke to your mother, Dr. Hannah continued, her voice softening slightly. Do you know what she asked me? She asked, Hannah, is my daughter going to die in Seoul? And I couldn't answer her. I couldn't promise her that you'd survive this, because honestly, Ngozi, I don't know if you will. I'm not going to die. You almost did. Dr. Hannah was shouting now, professional composure completely shattered. 2 broken ribs, a fractured collarbone. What if you'd hit your head? What if the next time he pushes you it's in front of a car? What if the next time he chokes you he doesn't stop? He's getting help. No, he's not. I've told you this before. Dr. Park Min-jun is dead. Has been dead for 3 years. There is no therapy. There are no appointments. He's lying to you. He's always been lying to you, and you're so desperate to believe him that you're ignoring every piece of evidence that contradicts the fantasy. They sat in silence for a moment, the truth hanging between them like a guillotine blade. I can't do this anymore, Dr. Hannah finally said. I can't sit here week after week watching you choose him over yourself, over your life. I'm not terminating our sessions yet, but I'm telling you right now, if you go back to him after this, after broken ribs and being thrown downstairs, I'm done. I will not be complicit in your death. So you're abandoning me too. I'm not abandoning you. I'm setting a boundary I should have set months ago. Dr. Hannah pulled something from her desk drawer, a card. She held it up to the camera. This is a safe house, women's shelter. They specialize in helping victims of domestic violence escape. They can help you disappear, help you get back to Nigeria, help you start over. I'm texting you the information right now. Ngozi's phone buzzed as the text came through. When you're ready, really ready to leave him, call that number. They'll protect you, they'll help you, but you have to be the one to make that call. I can't do it for you. Dr. Hannah, I love you, Ngozi. Your mother loves you. Your friends love you. But we can't save you. Only you can save you. So the question is, are you going to choose life? Or are you going to choose him? The screen went black. Session over. Ngozi sat there in the silence of her apartment, her broken body aching, her phone buzzing with the safe house information she knew she wouldn't call. Because calling would mean admitting defeat, would mean accepting that everyone who'd warned her had been right, would mean starting over with nothing. And she wasn't ready for that, wasn't strong enough for that. Not yet. Maybe not ever. A week later, Tae-Hyun was searching for Ngozi's passport. He wanted to book them a trip to Thailand for her birthday, a grand gesture to make up for everything, when he found it. Hidden in a drawer beneath old design sketches and forgotten receipts was his laptop, the one he kept at the penthouse, the one with his business files, the one Ngozi wasn't supposed to touch. She'd been looking for her passport, too, thinking maybe she'd put it in one of his drawers by accident. She'd opened the laptop to check his documents folder, thinking maybe he'd scanned it. Instead, she'd found hell. Folders labeled with efficient cold titles. financial records, 2023, 2025, shipping manifests, personnel, files, obstacles. Resolved, she'd known she shouldn't look, knew that whatever was in those folders would only confirm things she'd been trying not to know. But her hand moved on its own, clicking on obstacles resolved. Photos of men, dead men, rivals and associates, and people who'd crossed Tae-Hyun or his organization. Each file methodically documented, names, dates, methods, and then she saw it. Chidi Okonkwo, eliminated 2022 Chidi, her ex-boyfriend from 3 years ago. The gambling addict she'd tried to save before giving up and moving on. The one who'd died in a random car accident 6 months before she met Tae-Hyun. Except it hadn't been random. She clicked on the file with shaking hands, found police reports, photos of the crash scene, surveillance footage, and a handwritten note in Tae-Hyun's script. Obstacle eliminated. Target acquired. She's ready now. Target acquired. She's ready now. He'd killed Chidi to clear the way for her. Had murdered her ex-boyfriend so she'd be emotionally available when he swept into her life with his money and his charm and his promises. He'd engineered their entire relationship, had been watching her, planning for her, eliminating obstacles to have her long before that night at the gallery. Ngozi vomited in his office trash can. When she finished, she carefully closed all the files, shut down the laptop, and put everything back exactly as she'd found it. Her hands were steady now, her mind crystal clear in a way it hadn't been in months. She wasn't angry, wasn't even shocked, just done. Some part of her had known all along that Tae-Hyun was capable of this, had been choosing willful ignorance over terrifying truth for 18 months, but seeing it documented, seeing Chidi's name next to the word eliminated, seeing proof that she'd been a target instead of a coincidence, it changed something fundamental. She went back to her apartment that night, and for the first time in weeks, she felt clear-headed, felt like she could breathe, felt like maybe, just maybe, she could survive this. But she didn't call the safe house, didn't pack a bag, didn't run, because running required a plan, required resources, required courage she wasn't sure she possessed yet. So instead, she started preparing, started thinking, started plotting her escape in a way that wouldn't end with her becoming another file in Tae-Hyun's Obstacles Resolved folder. The confrontation came 3 days after Ngozi discovered the file. 3 days of pretending everything was normal, of letting Tae-Hyun touch her while her skin crawled with the knowledge of what his hands had done. 3 days of perfect performance while her mind raced with plans and possibilities, and the growing certainty that she was living with a murderer. She waited until they were alone in his penthouse, until he was relaxed and unsuspecting, pouring wine for them both as they prepared for dinner. "I know about Chidi," she said quietly. Tae-Hyun's hand stilled on the wine bottle, just for a second. Then he continued pouring, perfectly controlled. "Do you?" His voice was mild, curious, not defensive. "I found your files, the laptop. Obstacles. Resolved." He set down the wine bottle, turned to face her. His expression was unreadable, not angry, not panicked, just waiting. "You killed him," Ngozi continued, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. "You murdered Chidi so I'd be available when you decided to pursue me. You engineered our entire relationship. Yes. Just yes. No denial, no explanation, no attempt to soften it. Just cold, simple confirmation. That's it? Just yes? What else would you like me to say?" Tae-Hyun picked up his wine glass, took a sip. "Chidi was wasting your time, wasting your potential. You were trying to fix a broken man who didn't deserve you, who would have dragged you down with his addictions and his weakness. I removed him from the equation. You killed him. I eliminated an obstacle." He said it so matter-of-factly, like they were discussing a business transaction instead of murder. "You were brilliant, talented, and beautiful, and exactly what I wanted. But you were loyal to him in a way he didn't deserve, so I freed you from that misplaced loyalty." Ngozi felt like she was going to be sick again. "How long were you watching me? before we met at the gallery. 6 months. I saw your work at a small exhibition in Hongdae. Immediately knew I had to have you, your talent, your vision, you. So I researched you, learned everything about you, your friends, your habits, your relationships, and when I found out about Chidi, I knew he had to go. You're a monster. Yes. He said it without emotion, without argument. I've never claimed to be anything else. I'm my father's son, a man who takes what he wants and eliminates what stands in his way. You're the one who's been pretending I'm something I'm not. You made me fall in love with a lie. I made you fall in love with me, the real me. Everything between us has been real, Ngozi. My desire for you, my need for you, my obsession with you, all real. The only lie is the one you've been telling yourself about who I am. He moved closer, and she instinctively stepped back. He noticed, and something dark flickered in his eyes. Are you afraid of me now? He asked softly. I've always been afraid of you. I just didn't want to admit it. Good. Fear is honest. Love without fear isn't love. It's weakness. He reached out and touched her face, and she forced herself not to flinch away. You know what I'm capable of now. You know what I've done. So the question is, what are you going to do about it? I should go to the police. But you won't. It wasn't a question. Because you have no proof. I destroyed the laptop this morning, noticed it had been accessed, knew you'd found the files, so it's your word against mine. And who do you think the Seoul police will believe? The Nigerian immigrant or one of the most powerful men in Gangnam? He was right. Of course he was right. That's what made it so devastating. Even if you had proof, he continued, what would happen? I'd be arrested, maybe. My lawyers would delay the trial for years. And in the meantime, what would happen to you? Your boutique? Your visa? Your entire life in Seoul is built on my foundation, Ngozi. Pull me down and you come down with me. I don't care. I can start over. Can you? He grabbed her chin, forced her to look at him. You're 28 years old with broken ribs and a boutique you don't legally own. You go back to Lagos with nothing but the clothes on your back and the knowledge that you wasted 2 years on a man who destroyed you. Is that the story you want to tell? Tears were streaming down her face. I hate you. No, you don't. You hate yourself. You hate that you ignored all the warnings. You hate that you chose me over everyone who tried to save you. You hate that even now, knowing what I am, you're not going to leave. He kissed her forehead, gentle despite the cruelty of his words. Because leaving means admitting you were wrong, and you're too proud for that. He released her and stepped back, picking up his wine glass again. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to process this information. You're going to be angry and hurt, and probably dramatic about it for a few days. Maybe you'll even leave again, go stay with Kioma or hide in your apartment, but eventually you'll come back. Because you always do. And when you come back, we'll continue building our empire together. Aso Seoul will expand, you'll become famous, and we'll live with the truth between us that I'm a monster and you're the woman who loves a monster anyway. You're so sure I'll come back. I'm certain of it. His smile was cold. Because where else would you go? Who else would you be? I've shaped you, molded you, created you into exactly what I need. You're mine, Ngozi. You've been mine since the day I decided you would be. And no amount of moral outrage is going to change that. She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him he was wrong, that she was stronger than he thought, that this was the line she wouldn't cross. But looking at him now, beautiful and dangerous and completely confident in his ownership of her, she felt the fight drain out of her. Because he was right. Where would she go? What would she do? He'd systematically eliminated every other option until he was all she had left. I need some time, she said finally. To think, to process this. Take all the time you need. He gestured magnanimously. But Ngozi, don't do anything stupid. Don't go to the police. Don't try to run back to Nigeria. Don't make me chase you. Because if I have to chase you, when I catch you, and I will catch you, the consequences will be severe. It was a threat dressed up as advice. She heard it clearly. She left his penthouse that night and went back to her apartment, locked all the doors, and cried until she had nothing left. Then she pulled out her phone and stared at the safe house number Dr. Hannah had sent her. She should call, should ask for help, should let professionals extract her from this nightmare. But calling would make it real, would make her a victim instead of a complicated woman in a complicated relationship, would mean accepting that she'd wasted 2 years loving a murderer. So she didn't call. Instead, she booked a flight to Lagos. The decision to go home came at 3 a.m, when Ngozi was lying in her bed unable to sleep, her ribs aching and her mind racing with images of Chidi's death. She pulled out her laptop and used the last of her personal credit card limit, the card Tae-Hyun didn't know about, the one she'd kept hidden for emergencies, to book a one-way ticket to Lagos. She'd leave in the morning, before Tae-Hyun woke up. Before she could change her mind, before she could talk herself out of it the way she'd talked herself out of leaving every other time, she packed light, just one bag with clothes and her passport and the few possessions that were truly hers. Everything else in the apartment had been provided by Tae-Hyun. She'd leave it all behind, leave him behind, start over. The flight was at noon. She left her apartment at 9, took a taxi to the airport, checked in, and made it through security before her phone started buzzing. Tae-Hyun, where are you? Tae-Hyun. Ngozi, answer your phone. Tae-Hyun, I know you're not at your apartment. Where the fuck are you? She turned off her phone and kept walking toward her gate. Boarding announcement. Korean Air Flight 901 to Lagos, Nigeria, now boarding. This was it. Her escape, her freedom. She was actually doing it. She boarded the plane, found her seat, buckled in, watched Seoul disappear below her as they took off, and for the first time in months, she felt like she could breathe. Lagos welcomed her back with humidity and chaos, and the familiar sounds of pidgin English mixing with local languages. Her mother met her at Murtala Mohammed Airport, and the moment Ngozi saw her, older than she remembered, worry etched deep in her face, she broke down completely. "My baby," her mother whispered, holding her while Ngozi sobbed in the arrivals hall. "My baby, you're home. You're safe now. You're home." They took a taxi to her family's house in Ikeja, and Ngozi felt something in her chest unclench as they drove through familiar streets. This was home. Real home. Not the expensive prison Tae-Hyun had built for her in Seoul. Her mother put her to bed in her childhood room, the same room with the same faded posters and the same view of the neighbor's house. It felt like time traveling, like stepping back into a version of herself that existed before Tae-Hyun had systematically dismantled her. "Sleep," her mother commanded. "We'll talk later. Right now, just sleep." And Ngozi did. For 16 hours straight, she slept without nightmares, without waking up to check if Tae-Hyun was angry, without flinching at every sound. When she finally woke up, Dr. Hannah was sitting in a chair by her bed. "Welcome home," Dr. Hannah said gently. Ngozi started crying again. Dr. Hannah moved to the bed and held her, let her cry herself out, didn't say anything about therapy or sessions, or the fact that Ngozi had finally done what everyone had been begging her to do. "I'm proud of you," Dr. Hannah said finally. "Getting on that plane was the hardest thing you've ever done, and you did it. I left everything behind, the boutique, my designs, 2 years of work. You left him behind. That's all that matters. Everything else can be rebuilt. He killed Chidi." Ngozi said it out loud for the first time since leaving Seoul. "He murdered my ex-boyfriend so he could have me. He's been planning this for years. I know. Your mother told me." Dr. Hannah's voice was carefully controlled. "Are you going to report it? I have no proof. He destroyed the laptop. It's my word against his. Then we focus on healing, on rebuilding, on making sure you never go back." "I'm not going back," Ngozi said with more conviction than she felt. "I'm done. I'm finally done." Dr. Hannah looked at her for a long moment. And Ngozi could see the skepticism in her eyes, the knowledge that addicts always said they were done before going back for one more hit. "We'll see," Dr. Hannah said carefully. "For now, just rest. Let your mother take care of you. Let yourself be safe." The first week in Lagos was good. Ngozi slept and ate her mother's cooking and sat in the garden and slowly felt pieces of herself returning. Her ribs healed, her bruises faded. She started sketching again, tentative designs that felt like hers, not variations on what would sell at Seoul. Amara came to visit on day 8, walking into Ngozi's childhood bedroom with tears already streaming down her face. "You left," Amara said, pulling Ngozi into a careful hug. "You actually left him." "I did. I'm so proud of you, so proud." They talked for hours about Chidi's murder, about the abuse, about the 2 years of systematic destruction that Ngozi had survived, and for the first time, Ngozi didn't make excuses, didn't try to justify or rationalize, just told the truth. "I was an idiot," she said finally. "I ignored everyone who tried to warn me. I chose him over all of you. I'm sorry." "You were in love," Amara said gently, "and he was an expert at manipulation. This wasn't your fault, Ngozi." "It feels like my fault." "That's because he made you feel that way. That's what abusers do. But you're out now. You're safe, and we're going to help you stay out." Ngozi wanted to believe her, wanted to believe that this time would be different, that she'd stay in Lagos and rebuild and never look back. But her phone was still off, still hidden in a drawer. Because turning it on would mean confronting the hundreds of messages she knew would be there, the calls and texts and emails from Tae-Hyun, and she wasn't ready for that, wasn't strong enough yet. 3 weeks into her Lagos recovery, Ngozi finally turned on her phone. The messages flooded in immediately, hundreds of them. A timeline of Tae-Hyun's emotional journey from anger to pleading to desperation. "Tae-Hyun, you can't just leave without telling me. Where are you?" Tae-Hyun, "Ngozi, this isn't funny. Come home." Tae-Hyun, "I'm sorry. Whatever I did, I'm sorry. Just talk to me." Tae-Hyun, "I can't sleep without you. I can't function. Please." Tae-Hyun, "The boutique isn't the same without you. Nothing is the same." Tae-Hyun, "I'll change. Really change this time. I'll get help. Real help. Just come back." Tae-Hyun, "You're right about everything. I'm a monster, but I'm a monster who loves you. Doesn't that count for something?" Tae-Hyun, "It's been 3 weeks. I know you're in Lagos. I know you're with your mother. I'm giving you space, but Ngozi, I need you. I'm falling apart without you. She should delete them all without reading. Should block his number. Should resist the pull she felt even now, even after everything, to respond." But there was one message that stopped her cold. A video, sent 2 days ago. She clicked on it before she could stop herself. Tae-Hyun filled her screen, sitting in their bedroom, his bedroom, in the penthouse. He looked terrible, unshaven, disheveled, his eyes red from crying. Behind him, she could see the custom hanbok he'd commissioned for her, hanging on the closet door like a ghost. "Ngozi," he said, his voice wrecked. "I know you're watching this. I know you turned on your phone. I can see you're online." Ngozi's blood ran cold. Of course he could. He probably had tracking software on her phone, ways to monitor her activity even from across an ocean. "I'm not going to beg you to come back," he continued. "You've heard enough of that. Instead, I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm fucked up, severely, irreparably fucked up. My father made me into this thing that hurts people, and I've never learned how to be anything else. You know that now. You've always known it. But now, you've accepted it." He leaned closer to the camera, and Ngozi could see genuine pain in his eyes. "But here's what else is true. I love you. I love you more than I've ever loved anything. You're the only person who's ever made me want to be better. The only person who's ever made me feel like maybe I could be something other than my father's son, and without you I'm just empty." He was crying now, real tears streaming down his face. "I'm in therapy. Real therapy this time. I found a trauma specialist, Dr. Kim. I can send you her credentials, and I'm going twice a week. I'm confronting everything. My childhood, my violence, my need to control you. I'm doing the work, Ngozi. Real work. Not because I think it'll bring you back, but because you deserve better than what I've given you." He wiped his eyes, took a shaky breath. I'm not asking you to come back. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm just asking you to not give up on the idea that people can change, that I can change. Because you've already changed me, Ngozi. You've made me see that there's another way to be. And I'm going to become that person even if you never see it. The video ended. Ngozi sat there staring at her phone, her heart racing, her mind screaming at her not to fall for this again. This was the love bombing phase. This was manipulation. This was exactly what Dr. Hannah and Amara and everyone had warned her about. But God, he looked so broken, so genuine, so much like a man who really was changing. She watched the video again, and again, until she'd memorized every word, every tear, every crack in his voice. Until she started wondering if maybe, just maybe, this time was different. On the 4th week of her Lagos stay, Ngozi had her regular Zoom session with Dr. Hannah. But this time, something was different. There was a finality in Dr. Hannah's expression, a decision already made. You turned your phone back on, Dr. Hannah said. It wasn't a question. How did you? Your mother told me. Said you've been watching videos from him, reading his messages. Ngozi felt defensive anger flare. I'm allowed to check my phone. Of course you are. You're also allowed to drive yourself off a cliff. That doesn't make it a good idea. He says he's in therapy, real therapy this time. He's said that before. This time feels different. Stop. Dr. Hannah held up her hand. I need to tell you something, and I need you to hear it without interrupting. Can you do that? Ngozi nodded, suddenly afraid. I can't do this anymore, Dr. Hannah said quietly. I can't sit here week after week watching you process your abuse while you're still in love with your abuser. I can't take your money, your mother's money, while you use therapy as a pressure release valve instead of a catalyst for change. I left him. I'm in Lagos. You're preparing to go back. Dr. Hannah's voice was firm. I can see it in your eyes. You're watching his videos, reading his messages, convincing yourself that this time is different, that he's really changing, that you can go back and it'll all be okay. I'm not. Yes, you are, and I can't be part of it anymore. I'm terminating our therapeutic relationship. The words hit Ngozi like a physical blow. You're firing me? I'm setting a boundary I should have set months ago. You need a therapist who hasn't watched you destroy yourself for 2 years, someone who doesn't love you like family, someone who can maintain professional objectivity. I can't do that anymore. But I need you. No, you need to leave him. Actually leave him. Not just run to Lagos and process your trauma while keeping the door open for him to pull you back. You need to block his number, delete his messages, and commit to never seeing him again. And until you're willing to do that, therapy is just enabling your addiction to him. Tears were streaming down Ngozi's face. I'm trying. You're trying to have it both ways. Trying to be safe in Lagos while keeping him as an option in Seoul. But that's not how recovery works. You have to choose. Him or yourself. You can't have both. What if he really is changing? Then he can change without you. Dr. Hannah leaned closer to the camera. Ngozi, I'm going to say something harsh. Are you ready? Ngozi nodded, bracing herself. You're not in love with him. You're addicted to him. And like any addict, you'll tell yourself whatever you need to justify one more hit. He's changing. This time is different. He really loves me. These are the lies addicts tell themselves before they relapse. That's not fair. It's completely fair. You're exhibiting every sign of addiction, denying reality, rationalizing harmful behavior, prioritizing your drug of choice over everything else. And I'm not going to be the person who helps you manage your addiction. I'm telling you to get clean. So what am I supposed to do, just never talk to him again? Yes, exactly that. Block his number, delete his messages, grieve the relationship, and move on. That's what healthy people do when relationships become toxic. But approach closer, come nearer, Dr. Hannah said suddenly, her voice taking on an almost manic edge. Ngozi blinked, confused. What? Come closer to the screen. I need to tell you something important. Ngozi leaned toward her laptop, not understanding what Dr. Hannah was doing. How? Ngozi asked, staring at her screen. How am I supposed to come closer? We're on Zoom. I can't. She stopped, seeing the look on Dr. Hannah's face. The absurdity of the request, the impossibility of it, the metaphor. Exactly, Dr. Hannah said quietly. You can't. There's a screen between us. Just like there's an ocean between you and Tae-Hyun. You can't actually reach him, can't actually save him, can't actually fix him. You can watch him on a screen and tell yourself stories about who he might become, but you can't reach through and change him. That's not how any of this works. The metaphor landed with devastating clarity. God, I am done. Damn! Dr. Hannah sat back in her chair, looking exhausted. I can't reach you either, Ngozi. I've tried for 19 sessions. I've tried being gentle, being harsh, being everything in between. But I can't reach you. Only you can decide to save yourself. The screen went black. Dr. Hannah had ended the session. Ngozi sat there in her childhood bedroom, surrounded by the ghosts of who she used to be, and felt the weight of the choice in front of her. Stay in Lagos. Heal. Build a new life. Let Tae-Hyun become a painful memory. Or go back to Seoul. See if he really has changed. Give him one more chance. Her phone buzzed. Tae-Hyun. I know you're watching my messages. I know you're thinking about coming back. When you're ready, I'll be waiting. I'll always be waiting. You're mine, Ngozi. Distance doesn't change that. She stared at the message for a long time. Then she opened her laptop and booked a flight back to Seoul. 3 days later, Ngozi stood in Incheon Airport with a single suitcase and a heart full of justifications. The flight from Lagos had been turbulent, but nothing compared to the storm inside her mind. Dr. Hannah's words warring with Tae-Hyun's promises, logic battling against the gravitational pull of a love that had nearly destroyed her. She'd told her mother she was going to meet with lawyers about reclaiming her designs. She'd told Amara she needed to collect her things from the apartment. She'd told herself she was just going to talk to him, to see if he'd really changed, to give him one chance to prove that therapy had worked. All lies. The truth was simpler and more terrifying. She couldn't stay away. 3 weeks of safety in Lagos hadn't been enough to break the addiction. If anything, the distance had made her forget the fear, remember only the intensity, the feeling of being consumed by someone who wanted her so desperately he'd killed for her. Tae-Hyun was waiting at arrivals. He looked different, thinner, older somehow, with dark circles under his eyes that suggested he hadn't been sleeping. But when he saw her, his whole face transformed. Not quite a smile. Something more desperate than that. You came, he said, his voice rough with emotion. I came to talk, that's all. Of course. Just talk. He reached for her suitcase, and when their hands brushed, Ngozi felt electricity shoot up her arm. 3 weeks apart hadn't diminished anything. If anything, the separation had intensified the connection, made it more undeniable. They didn't make it to talk. They barely made it to the parking garage. The moment they were alone in the elevator, Tae-Hyun's hands were on her, his mouth finding hers with desperate hunger. Ngozi knew she should stop this, knew that having sex with him in an airport parking garage was the opposite of healthy boundaries. But God, she'd missed this, missed the way he touched her like she was oxygen, missed the intensity of being wanted this much. They had rough, desperate sex against his car, Ngozi's back pressed against cold metal, her legs wrapped around his waist, both of them crying and gasping and holding on like drowning people. I missed you, he groaned into her neck. Every second, every breath, I missed you. I missed you too, she admitted, and hated herself for the truth of it. Afterward, they sat in the car in silence, reality seeping back in with the afternoon light. This doesn't mean I'm staying, Ngozi said finally. I know. I just needed to see you, to talk, to understand if anything has actually changed. Everything has changed. He started the car, pulled out of the parking space. I'll show you. He took her to his therapist's office. Dr. Kim was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and an office that looked nothing like the fake card Tae-Hyun had shown her months ago. She greeted them professionally, and Ngozi could see appointment books on her desk, credentials on the wall, the infrastructure of a real practice. Tae-Hyun has made significant progress, Dr. Kim said carefully after Tae-Hyun had explained why Ngozi was there. He's been coming twice a week for the past month. We've been working on his trauma responses, his need for control, his patterns of violence. And? Ngozi asked. Has he changed? Change is a process, not a destination. Tae-Hyun has gained insight into his behaviors. He's developed coping mechanisms. He's expressed genuine remorse for his actions. But Ngozi, I have to be clear. Abuse is not something that gets fixed with a month of therapy. So he's still dangerous. All people are capable of harm under the right circumstances. What matters is whether someone has developed the tools to manage their impulses, to recognize their triggers, to choose differently in moments of stress. And has he? Dr. Kim looked at Tae-Hyun, then back at Ngozi. He's building those tools. Whether he'll use them consistently is something only time will tell, but I can confirm he's doing the work, real work, not performance. It should have been reassuring. Instead, it felt ambiguous, non-committal, not the guarantee Ngozi needed to hear. After they left the office, Tae-Hyun took her hand. I know it's not enough. I know 1 month of therapy doesn't erase 2 years of abuse, but Ngozi, I'm trying, really trying, and I'm asking, begging, for a chance to show you that I can be different. I don't know if I can trust you. I don't expect you to, not yet. But stay, just for a while. Let me prove it to you. If I slip, if I show any sign of violence, you leave. No arguments. I'll even help you leave. It was the most reasonable he'd ever sounded, the most self-aware. And that reasonableness was more dangerous than any of his previous manipulations because it felt like actual change. Okay, Ngozi heard herself say. I'll stay, but separate apartments. We're not living together. Whatever you need. And if you hurt me even once, I'm gone. Permanently. Understood. They shook on it like a business deal. Like abuse was something that could be negotiated, managed, controlled through careful boundaries and good intentions. Ngozi moved back into her apartment. Tae-Hyun gave her space. They had dinners together, walked along the Han River, talked about the boutique and her designs, and carefully avoided the elephant in the room, that he'd murdered her ex-boyfriend and nearly killed her by throwing her down the stairs. For 2 weeks, it was almost normal, almost healthy. Almost like they could build something real from the wreckage. Then came the night that broke everything beyond repair. It started with a text message. Ngozi was at the boutique, working late on a new collection, when her phone buzzed. A photo from an unknown number. Tae-Hyun with a woman. A beautiful woman with her hand on his chest, her lips near his ear, at what looked like one of his clubs. The timestamp was from earlier that evening. The accompanying message, thought you should know what your changed man is doing tonight. A friend. Ngozi stared at the photo, her hands shaking. It could be innocent, could be business, could be nothing, or it could be exactly what it looked like. She called him. He didn't answer. Called again. Voicemail. She took a taxi to Club Azure, her heart pounding, telling herself she was overreacting, that 2 weeks of good behavior proved he'd changed. But when she walked into the VIP section, she found him exactly where the photo had shown him, with the same woman laughing, his hand on her thigh in a way that was anything but professional. He looked up and saw Ngozi, and instead of guilt or panic, his face went cold. Empty. You weren't supposed to be here, he said calmly. Clearly. Ngozi's voice shook. Who is she? Business associate. With your hand on her thigh? That kind of business associate? The woman, sensing trouble, quickly excused herself. Tae-Hyun watched her go, then turned back to Ngozi. What are you doing here? Spying on me? Someone sent me a photo of you with her. And you immediately assumed the worst. After I've been in therapy, after I've done everything you asked, you still don't trust me." Your hand was on her thigh, because she was telling me something sensitive, and I wanted to make sure she knew I was listening. It was a gesture of attention, not intimacy. But you saw what you wanted to see. Evidence that I haven't changed. Proof that you were right to run to Lagos. He was turning it around, making her the problem, making her jealousy the issue instead of his behavior. It was so familiar it made her nauseous. "Don't do this," she said quietly. "Don't gaslight me. I saw what I saw." "You saw what some friend wanted you to see. Don't you wonder who sent that photo? Who wants to sabotage us? Could be Minji. Could be one of a dozen women who hate that I chose you. But instead of asking me about it, instead of trusting me, you ran here ready to accuse me. Because you've given me every reason not to trust you. And I've been earning that trust back, day by day. But it's never going to be enough for you, is it? You're always going to see me as the monster, always going to be waiting for me to slip, always going to have one foot out the door. Maybe that's smart, maybe that's survival, maybe it's cowardice." His voice went cold. "Maybe you're using my past as an excuse to never fully commit, to keep yourself safe while claiming you want us to work. But relationships require trust, Ngozi, and you don't trust me. You never will." She felt tears burning behind her eyes, because part of her knew he was right. She didn't trust him, would never trust him, not after everything, but another part of her knew that was his fault, not hers. "That you didn't earn trust back with 2 weeks of good behavior after 2 years of abuse." "I'm leaving," she said. "Of course you are. You always do." "What do you want from me, Tae-Hyun? You want me to see you with another woman and just accept it? Just believe whatever explanation you give me? I want you to fight for us the way I fight for us. I want you to believe I can change instead of just waiting for me to fail. I want—" He stopped, took a breath. "I want you to love me enough to stay even when it's hard. I've stayed through broken ribs, through you murdering my ex, through being thrown downstairs. How much harder does it need to get? Until you stop keeping one foot out the door. Until you're all in. Until you trust me. I can't trust someone who hurts me. Then we're done." He said it flatly, finally. "Because I can't live with someone who's constantly waiting for me to become a monster again. It's exhausting. It makes me want to just live up to your expectations and be the villain you keep accusing me of being." The threat was clear. If she didn't give him complete trust, he'd become the thing she feared. It was emotional blackmail dressed up as honesty. "Then maybe we are done," Ngozi said. She walked out of the club, expecting him to follow, to chase her, to pull her back the way he always did. But this time, he didn't. This time, he let her go. And that, somehow, was worse than anything he'd done before. Ngozi went back to her apartment and spent the next 3 days in a fog of grief and confusion. Tae-Hyun didn't call, didn't text, didn't show up at her door with flowers and apologies. The silence was deafening. On the 4th day, Kioma came to check on her, bringing food and gentle concern. "You look terrible," Kioma said, setting containers of soup on the counter. "Thanks. What happened?" So Ngozi told her. About coming back to Seoul, about the therapy, about the 2 weeks of good behavior, about the photo and the fight, and the ultimatum. "He's manipulating you again," Kioma said gently, "making you feel guilty for not trusting him when he's done nothing to earn trust. But what if he's right? What if I'm sabotaging us by not believing he can change?" "Ngozi, listen to yourself. You're taking responsibility for his behavior. Again. He's the one who hurt you for 2 years. He's the one who needs to earn trust back. Not you who needs to blindly give it. But how do you rebuild trust if you never take the risk? You don't rebuild trust with someone who threw you down the stairs. You leave. You protect yourself. You choose safety over hope." Ngozi knew Chioma was right. Logically, intellectually, she knew it, but emotionally, she was still tangled up in the fantasy that love could fix this, that commitment could heal this, that trying harder would make the difference. "I found something," Ngozi said suddenly. Weeks ago, before I left for Lagos, in his laptop. What? Files, murders he'd committed, including Chidi, my ex. He killed Chidi to clear the way for me. He's been planning this relationship since before I even knew he existed. Kioma went very still. You found proof of murder? Had proof. He destroyed the laptop, but I know what I saw. Chidi's file. Obstacle eliminated. It was all there. Ngozi. Chioma grabbed her hands. If you have any evidence, screenshots, anything, you need to go to the police. I don't have anything. And even if I did, what would happen? He's too powerful. His lawyers would destroy me. So you're just going to live with the knowledge that you're in love with a murderer? I'm not. Ngozi stopped, because she couldn't finish that sentence honestly. She was in love with a murderer, was addicted to a man who'd killed for her, and that knowledge was eating her alive. I need to do something, Ngozi said finally. I can't just leave things like this. I can't just walk away and let him win. What are you thinking? An idea was forming, dangerous and desperate and probably stupid. But it was the only way Ngozi could see to reclaim any kind of power in this situation. The boutique's grand opening, Ngozi said slowly. We've been planning a relaunch, new collection, big event. Everyone who matters in Seoul fashion will be there. Okay? What if I used it? Use the platform to expose him. Tell everyone what he is. Burn it all down, literally and metaphorically. Ngozi, that's dangerous. If you expose him publicly, he could what? Kill me? He's going to kill me eventually anyway. At least this way, I go down fighting. At least this way, I make sure everyone knows the truth. You're talking about destruction, about revenge. That's not healing. That's not moving forward. Maybe I'm not meant to heal. Maybe I'm meant to burn. And maybe I take him down with me. Kioma looked at her for a long moment. And Ngozi could see the war playing out on her friend's face, the desire to talk her out of this insanity versus the understanding that Ngozi had reached the point where she needed to act, not just endure. If you're going to do this, Kioma said finally, you need a plan. A real plan. Not just chaos. You need evidence, support, an escape route. I need to talk to Jiwoo. Jiwoo. The woman from the club, the one Tae-Hyun had hit for touching him in front of Ngozi, another victim in his collection. You think she'll help? I think she'd love to see him burn. Jiwoo agreed to meet at a cafe in Hongdae, far from Gangnam and Tae-Hyun's usual territory. She looked different than Ngozi remembered, less makeup, more tired, the kind of exhaustion that came from surviving something terrible. You're the girlfriend, Jiwoo said in Korean when Ngozi sat down. The special one. Not anymore, and I don't think I was ever actually special, just the latest. True. Jiwoo lit a cigarette, even though smoking inside was illegal. The cafe owner didn't stop her. What do you want? I want to destroy him. That got Jiwoo's attention. She looked at Ngozi with new interest, assessing whether this was real or just another woman's dramatic post-breakup fantasy. How? I'm planning a grand opening for the boutique. Big event, press, celebrities. His whole criminal network will be there. I want to use it to expose him. Tell everyone what he is. Show them proof of his crimes. You have proof? Some, and I'm hoping you have more. You and however many other women he's hurt. I want testimonies. Evidence. Anything that proves what he is. Jiwoo smoked thoughtfully. You know he'll kill you for this. Probably, but I'm dead either way. At least this way I take him down with me. Poetic. Jiwoo stubbed out her cigarette. Stupid but poetic. You know what? I'm in. And I know at least 5 other women who'd help. He's hurt a lot of people. Time someone made him pay. Over the next 3 weeks, Ngozi built her plan with the methodical focus of someone who had nothing left to lose. She gathered testimonies from Jiwoo and the other women, stories of abuse, manipulation, coercion. She made copies of every financial document she could access, evidence of money laundering and trafficking that would interest the police, even if they couldn't prove murder. She worked on the boutique's relaunch, making it bigger and more elaborate than originally planned. She told Tae-Hyun about it. They were still in that weird limbo of broken up but not quite over, and he agreed to come, to support her, because despite everything, he still believed he owned her success. She even arranged one final thing: the sprinkler system. A contact Kioma knew, an engineer who owed her favors, came in under the guise of inspecting the system and instead rigged it, not with water, with accelerant, so that when Ngozi was ready, when she'd said everything she needed to say, she could burn the whole beautiful cage to the ground. "This is insane," the engineer said as he worked. "You know this is insane, right?" "Completely," Ngozi agreed. "Do it anyway." 2 days before the event, Ngozi had her affairs in order. She'd transferred her actual designs, the ones that were truly hers, to a cloud account under a fake name. She'd written letters to her mother and Amara to be delivered only if something happened to her. She'd contacted journalists and activists, people who would make sure the story got told even if she didn't survive to tell it. She was ready. The night of the grand opening, Seoul looked spectacular. Ngozi's designs hung on custom displays, vibrant Ankara prints in conversation with elegant Korean silhouettes. The space was packed with Seoul's fashion elite, celebrities, buyers, and, as Ngozi had counted on, Tae-Hyun's entire criminal network, men in expensive suits with guns tucked into shoulder holsters, women who'd been his lovers and his victims, everyone who needed to see what happened next. Tae-Hyun arrived with his usual entourage, and when he saw Ngozi, something complicated crossed his face. Pride, perhaps, or possession, or maybe just the satisfaction of a man who thought he'd won. "You look beautiful," he said, pulling her aside. He was wearing the suit she'd once told him looked best on him, and the gesture felt deliberate, a reminder of when they'd been happy. "The space is incredible. You did this." "We did this," she corrected, and watched pleasure bloom on his face. He wanted her to claim him publicly, to acknowledge their partnership, to show everyone that despite everything, she was still his. "We did," he agreed, and kissed her forehead. A gesture of ownership disguised as affection. The event proceeded as planned. Guests mingled, admired the designs, drank expensive champagne. Ngozi moved through the crowd on autopilot, accepting compliments, making small talk, waiting for the moment. At 9 o'clock, she took the microphone. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her voice carrying through the space. "I want to talk about Seoul, about what it represents, about what it took to build it." Tae-Hyun was at the edge of the crowd, smiling at her, proud of her, completely unsuspecting. "This boutique is named for 2 cultures, African and Korean, 2 parts of my identity, but it was built on something else, something darker." She took a breath. "It was built on violence, on control, on a man who bought my dreams and used them to cage me." The room went quiet. Tae-Hyun's smile faltered. "Kim Tae-Hyun, the man standing over there, is a criminal, a trafficker, a murderer, and he's also my boyfriend, my partner. The man I've loved for 2 years while he systematically destroyed me." "Ngozi," Tae-Hyun said, starting to move toward her. "What are you doing?" "He murdered my ex-boyfriend 3 years ago to clear the way for me. He's hit me, choked me, thrown me down the stairs. He's done the same to dozens of women in this room. And I've stayed, because he built me this cage and convinced me it was freedom, because he made me believe that abuse was passion and control was love." Security guards, Tae-Hyun's men, were moving toward her now, but Ji-woo and the other women had positioned themselves strategically, blocking the paths. "I have evidence," Ngozi continued, pulling out a USB drive. "Financial records, testimonies, proof of everything, and I've already sent copies to the police, to journalists, to everyone who needs to see. So you can kill me, Tae-Hyun, but you can't stop this. The truth is already out there." Tae-Hyun had reached the front of the crowd now, and the expression on his face was terrifying, not angry, something colder, more final. "You're making a mistake," he said quietly. "No, staying with you was the mistake. Building a life with you was the mistake. Believing you could change was the mistake. This?" She held up a lighter. This is me finally getting it right. Ngozi, don't. She clicked the lighter. The sprinkler system activated, but instead of water, accelerant rained down. The boutique, her beautiful cage, ignited immediately. Flames raced up the walls, across the ceiling, consuming everything. Chaos, screaming, people running for the exits. Ngozi stood in the center of it, watching her dream burn, feeling something like freedom for the first time in 2 years. Tae-Hyun lunged for her, but security, real security, the kind Kiyoma had arranged, not his men, grabbed him. Police were already arriving, alerted by the evidence Ngozi had sent them hours ago. As they dragged him away, Tae-Hyun screamed at her, "You'll come back, you always do." And for the first time, Ngozi knew with absolute certainty that he was wrong. She walked out of the burning boutique in the custom hanbok he'd made for her, letting it burn too, letting it all burn, and into the Seoul night where Kiyoma and Jiwoo waited with a car. "Let's go," Kiyoma said. They drove away as the boutique collapsed behind them, taking with it 2 years of dreams and nightmares, of love and violence, of the woman Ngozi had been and the woman she'd almost become. 6 months later, the safe house had been exactly what Dr. Hannah promised, a place to disappear, to heal, to rebuild without the weight of Tae-Hyun's presence. Ngozi spent the first 3 months there barely functional, grieving everything she'd lost while simultaneously understanding she'd gained her life back. Tae-Hyun was arrested on multiple charges: trafficking, money laundering, assault. The evidence Ngozi and the other women had provided was enough to ensure he'd spend decades in prison. His empire had collapsed, his reputation destroyed, his power broken. And yet, Ngozi still thought about him every day, still woke up sometimes reaching for him before remembering, still felt the pull of that toxic connection, that addictive intensity. "That's normal," her new therapist said, a woman in Lagos who specialized in trauma and domestic violence. "Trauma bonds don't disappear just because the person who hurt you is gone. You're essentially detoxing from an addiction. It takes time." More time than Ngozi wanted to admit, but slowly, painfully, she was learning to exist without him, learning to find intensity in other things, in her art, in her healing, in the slow process of becoming someone new. She received a letter from Tae-Hyun's prison. Against every piece of advice, she opened it. "Ngozi, I knew you'd leave eventually. I was always just waiting to see how. I didn't expect the fire. That was inspired. Dramatic. Very you. I'm in therapy here. Real therapy this time. No choice about it. And my therapist asked me something interesting. Did you love her? Or did you love owning her? I still don't know the answer. What I do know is that you were the most real thing in my life. The only person who ever made me want to be different. And I destroyed you anyway because that's what men like me do. We destroy the things we love. I hope you're rebuilding. I hope you're creating beautiful things again. I hope you find someone who can love you without hurting you, though I honestly can't imagine what that would look like. And I hope you never come visit me. Because if you do, I'll know I still own part of you. And you deserve to be free. I love you. I'm sorry. I'll always love you. Chach." Ngozi read the letter 3 times, feeling that familiar pull. Then she did something she'd never been able to do before. She burned it, watched it curl and blacken and turn to ash, just like the boutique, just like their relationship, just like the version of herself that had believed love and pain were the same thing. She didn't write back, didn't visit, didn't give him the satisfaction of knowing she'd even read it. Instead, she opened her laptop and started sketching. New designs. Hers, no one else's. Untainted by violence or control or the weight of someone else's expectations. It wasn't happiness yet. Might never be happiness. But it was freedom, and for the first time in 2 years, that was enough. 1 year later, Ngozi stood in a small workshop in Lagos, teaching young women to sew. The space was modest, nothing like Aso Seoul's grandeur, but it was hers, truly hers. No one's name on the documents but her own. No funding from criminals, no strings attached. A young woman approached after class, maybe 22, with bright eyes and that particular energy of someone in a new relationship. "Ms. Ngozi, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "My boyfriend." The girl hesitated. "He's really intense, really passionate. My friends say he's too controlling, but I think they're jealous. He just loves me so much, you know? Sometimes it's overwhelming, but in a good way." Ngozi looked at this girl, this mirror of who she'd been, and felt her chest tighten. "Does he ever hurt you?" Ngozi asked gently. "Only when I push him too far. But he always apologizes. He's had a rough childhood, and he's working on himself. I know I can help him. I know if I just love him enough." "You can't fix him." The words came out harder than Ngozi intended. She softened her voice. "I'm sorry, but you can't. No amount of love will fix someone who hurts you. That's not how it works." "But you don't understand. He's just damaged. He needs someone who won't give up on him." "I understand perfectly." Ngozi put down her scissors, gave this girl her full attention. "I was you, 5 years ago, and I almost died trying to save someone who didn't want to be saved. So I'm telling you what I wish someone had made me hear. If he hurts you, leave. The first time. Don't wait for it to get worse. Don't tell yourself stories about healing him. Just leave." "You make it sound so easy." "It's not easy. It's the hardest thing you'll ever do. But it's possible. And you're worth it." The girl looked offended, defensive, exactly like Ngozi had looked when Amara and Chioma and Dr. Hannah had tried to warn her. "You don't know him," the girl said, backing away. "You don't know us." She left, and Ngozi watched her go, feeling the helplessness of recognizing a disaster you can't prevent. Chioma, who'd been listening from the doorway, came to stand beside her. "You tried," Chioma said. "It won't be enough. She won't listen. I wouldn't have listened." "Maybe. Or maybe you planted a seed. Maybe when things get bad, and they will get bad, she'll remember what you said, that someone who survived gave her permission to leave. And maybe she'll end up like me, broken and rebuilding and wondering how she lost so many years. Or maybe she'll be smarter than you were. Leave earlier. Save herself sooner." Chioma squeezed her shoulder. "You can't save everyone, Ngozi. You can just tell the truth and hope it matters." That night, alone in her apartment, Ngozi did something she hadn't done in months. She Googled Tae-Hyun's name. The articles came up immediately. His trial, his conviction, his sentencing. 25 years for trafficking and assault. The murder charges hadn't stuck, not enough evidence, but the rest was enough. There was a recent article with a headline that made her stomach drop. "Reformed crime boss speaks out about domestic violence from prison." She clicked on it before she could stop herself. The article featured an interview with Tae-Hyun, conducted via phone from his prison cell. He talked about his crimes, his childhood, his transformation through therapy. And then, near the end, "I hurt a woman I loved, hurt her badly, repeatedly, for years, and I told myself it was passion, intensity, the price of real love. But it wasn't love, it was control dressed up as devotion, and by the time I understood the difference, I'd already destroyed her. Or tried to. Turned out she was stronger than I gave her credit for. She's the one who finally stopped me. Stopped me from hurting her. Stopped me from hurting anyone else. She saved herself when I wouldn't let anyone else save her, and I hope she never forgives me for that, because she shouldn't. Some things are unforgivable." Ngozi stared at the words, feeling something complicated and painful twist in her chest. He was using their story, commodifying their trauma, becoming the poster boy for reform from the safety of a prison cell where he couldn't hurt anyone anymore. And yet, there was something in those words that felt true. An acknowledgement she'd never gotten while they were together, an honesty that might help someone else recognize their own situation. She closed the article, almost deleted the bookmark, then saved it instead. Not because she forgave him, not because she was still in love with him, but because sometimes you needed to remember where you'd been to appreciate where you were now. Her phone buzzed, a text from her mother. "Dinner tomorrow? Your father wants to hear about the new collection." Ngozi smiled, a real smile, not the hollow performance she'd perfected in Seoul, and typed back, "I'll be there. Love you." She put down her phone and looked around her small apartment. It wasn't luxury, wasn't impressive, wasn't the kind of success she'd dreamed about when she first came to Seoul all those years ago, but it was safe and quiet and hers. And for now, that was more than enough. Some lessons can only be learned by burning. Ngozi had learned that the hard way, learned it in broken bones and shattered dreams and the slow, painful process of rebuilding a self that had been systematically dismantled by someone who claimed to love her. She thought about that girl from the workshop sometimes. Wondered if she'd listened? Wondered if she'd left before it got too bad? Wondered if she'd become another statistic or another survivor? The truth was, Ngozi would never know. Couldn't know. Could only hope that somewhere, somehow, her story mattered. That speaking the truth about her own destruction might save someone else from the same fate. Because that was the thing about surviving abuse. You couldn't undo what had been done to you, couldn't erase the scars or the trauma or the years lost to someone else's violence, but you could use it, could transform it from a private shame into a public testimony, could turn your destruction into someone else's roadmap out. Ngozi looked at her reflection in the workshop mirror. 30 years old, scarred but standing, broken but rebuilding. She didn't recognize this version of herself, didn't know yet who she was without the weight of Tae-Hyun's presence defining her. But she was learning, day by day, breath by breath, sketch by sketch, learning to exist without intensity, learning that quiet wasn't boring, it was safe, learning that love without fear was possible, even if she hadn't found it yet, learning that some things, once burned, could rise from the ashes. She picked up her scissors and went back to work. The boutique in Seoul was gone. The woman who'd built it was gone too. But Ngozi Okafor, the real one, not the version Tae-Hyun had tried to create, was still here, still fighting, still creating, still surviving. And maybe, someday, that girl from the workshop would remember her words, would recognize herself in Ngozi's story, would choose to leave before the burning got fatal. Or maybe she wouldn't. Maybe some lessons could only be learned through fire. Ngozi understood that now. Understood that you couldn't save everyone, couldn't force people to choose themselves, couldn't love people into leaving their abusers. All you could do was survive, tell the truth, and hope it mattered. She looked down at the fabric in her hands, vibrant, alive, full of possibility, and got back to work, creating something beautiful from the ashes.